Chapter 694. In a not-so-bustling seaside town, a warrior who had just finished drinking was on his way home. He was holding a wine pot in his hand, and his body was staggering, humming a little tune with a hint of peachy smell. The warrior suddenly felt the urge to pee, so he opened his hazy eyes and quickly found a small alley. He planned to go in and relieve himself on the spot. In the depths of the alley, just as the warrior had finished his business and was feeling refreshed, a soft purple light suddenly appeared. There seemed to be something there. The warrior was curious, but he was not afraid because he was drunk. He walked closer step by step. He realized that the source of the purple light seemed to be this strange purple fog. At this time, the warrior's reaction was very slow. He opened his eyes and stared in front of him in a daze. Finally, there was a flash of panic in the warrior's eyes. He took a step back and fell to the ground. His sense of balance was really too bad. Ah! Monster! Monster! He turned around and wanted to crawl and run out of this place in fear. He regretted that he should not have peed in this place. He continued to run crazily, but in the end, he could not run out of this place. The purple fog had been completely swallowed by him. Only an even more miserable cry could be heard, and everything returned to normal. Not long after, the warrior walked out of the alley again. He was no longer staggered but was rather steady. This was because he had turned into the Hakata serpent. To be exact, he was just a temporary vessel for the Hakata serpent. Of course, it did not need to take over a warrior's body, but it had to do so now. It needed this warrior's body to hide its aura, because it did not know if the strange person with the Jianlu sword would chase after it. Jianlu's sword, the sword of the emperor, was made by the righteousness of heaven and earth. It had great restraining power against all evil beings. The Jianlu sword has appeared again? The warrior that Yamata no Orochi was attached to muttered to himself as he walked. Back then, there was a strange Taoist who used a sword to slay demons. He used this clear sable sword. Even though I'm young, I still can't forget the aura of the clear sable sword. So I can't be wrong. The Hakata serpent couldn't help but feel bewildered. Back then, the strange Taoist suddenly disappeared after slaying the demon with his sword. It and most of its clansmen were lucky enough to survive. Later on, when it gradually grew up, it broke off with the clan because of differences in ideology, and had no choice but to be exiled in the end. As for this Yenwua world, it was a strange space that it found by chance. It seemed to be a complete world, but it revealed a strange feeling everywhere. Everything seemed to be right but was actually wrong. It was just that, in this world, no one could fight against it except for the two in the 8-sun hall. Thus, he decided to settle down here for the time being. When he had nothing to do, he would sleep. When he was bored, he would wreak havoc. Although he was no longer in Kelowna, he was still carefree. However, it did not expect that because of its greed, it would be sealed for so long before it was finally released. It did not expect that as soon as it was released, it would encounter the clear sable sword that had caused it, its clansmen, and even the entire demon realm to tremble in fear. At the moment when it recognized the clear sable sword, the Hakata serpent almost thought that the strange Taoist appeared again. Could it be the descendant of that Taoist? The Hakata serpent frowned at this time. It seemed that the more it thought about it, the more likely it was, but it couldn't grasp the key point in it. There was too little information from the outside world. I don't know how many years have passed in Kelowna. Has the Xiong Lu clan? The Hakata serpent's eyes revealed a hint of hatred. I absolutely don't agree with this idea. From then on, I am no longer a member of the Xiong Lu clan. I am myself. The Hakata serpent finally walked out of this small town quickly, but at the moment of leaving, it seemed to feel something. It subconsciously looked up at the end of the night sky. The Hakata serpent's expression changed slightly, and it muttered to itself, "Who is changing the rules of this pseudo-world?" The pupils of the human body that it possessed suddenly turned golden, and a strange smile appeared at the corner of its mouth. Could it be that this world belongs to me? Is it fate? Forget it. Back then, I couldn't defeat Izanagi and Izanami. Now why not give it a try? The Hakata serpent finally disappeared into the wilderness. In Emo Xiaofei's opinion, the house of the samurai and Master Nagato looked a little like the ancient scenic buildings in Area 11 that he often saw on TV. The wooden floor, corridors, courtyards, and small ponds were winding, and he could even see servants kneeling on the ground to welcome him. It was already past midnight, but Emo Xiaofei's spirit was strong, so he wasn't sleepy. On the contrary, Master Nagato's eyes were bloodshot. In addition to Master Nagato, there was also his younger brother, Saburo, and his young son, Shinji Nagato. Dong. The bamboo tube in the pond outside the house welcomed the water flow and finally made a crisp sound. At the same time, Master Nagato in the house also slowly said, "Your Highness Kojiro, I don't know what you have considered. Do you plan to stay in Unripe Rice Village for the time being? Once you can stay, the Nagato family will reward you handsomely after the matter is over." In Master Nagato's house, Emo Xiaofei knew more things than he knew from bamboo. First of all, the curse of the village did not always exist, but it happened in the past 6 years. At first, the Nagato family did not wait for death but tried everything. However, even the witch of the local shrine had died. The Nagato family seemed to have truly succumbed to this curse. Let's not talk about whether the Nagato family really fought against the curse. After all, there were many things that could not be justified. Now, the Nagato family's request was to take care of all the cursed women in this village. As long as Emo Xiaofei thought about it, he felt a chill down his spine. Although the curse started at the age of 14, which was a wonderful age, there was no upper limit to the curse. There are so many old ladies. It's so evil. Master Nagato. Emo Xiaofei quickly recalled the news about the curse he heard, and then said sternly, "After listening for so long, you seem to have not told me what the source of this curse is. A curse will not appear for no reason. There must be a reason for it. This matter is related to the secret of my Unripe Rice Village. I can't tell you." Master Nagato spoke slowly, but it was a refusal. "Your Highness Kojiro, just answer me. Are you willing or not?" This was not a tone of begging but an order. Emo Xiaofei believed that everyone was equal. He was very resistant to this class concept. He shook his head and said, "I won't agree. You don't know what's good for you." Shinji Nagato, who was sitting next to him, snorted coldly at this time, then looked at Master Nagato. "Father, I have already said that this kind of outsider just doesn't know how to be flexible. There is no need to waste time talking to them. Just tie them up." He jumped up at once and pulled out his sword without saying a word. He looked arrogant. "You are also a samurai. Do you dare to accept my challenge? If you lose, you will stay." Emo Xiaofei opened his mouth and finally sighed. He complained, "If I win, I have to fight all of you. Because you want to say that you never thought I could win? Smart. But, can you win against me?" Shinji Nagato snorted coldly. Chapter 695. Eliminating the Weak and Keeping the Strong. Emo Xiaofei didn't know if the so-called samurai way was far from such a thought. But, in Emo Xiaofei's opinion, Shinji Nagato at least thought so. Emo Xiaofei had long made a conclusion on how to use power, and he didn't want to change his original intention. But it didn't mean that he didn't know how to be flexible. There was still no news from the class monitor and others. How could he continue to dawdle here with the Nagato family? Then, let's duel. Emo Xiaofei stood up, looked at the tip of the sword in Shinji Nagato's hand, and said sternly, "But, I won't use a weapon. How dare you look down on me?" Shinji Nagato's face suddenly showed a hint of anger when he heard it. Emo Xiaofei didn't want to continue to be entangled, so he said, "Well, at the right time, I will draw my sword. But, do you really plan to do it here? For a samurai, no matter where it is a battlefield. Shinji Nagato shouted at this time, holding the sword high above his head with both hands. He stood in a straight line with one foot in front and one back. His body leaned forward slightly, but he moved quickly. For Emo Xiaofei it was too slow. With a sidestep, Emo Xiaofei put his foot down casually, and directly knocked Shinji Nagato to the ground. Shinji Nagato quickly got up, only to feel that his cheeks were burning. Looking at his father and uncle who were still sitting in front of him, he felt even more uncomfortable. Damn it. He even slashed horizontally. It seemed that he was a little confused because of anger. Emo Xiaofei took a step back and dodged easily. This samurai's attack was not comparable to Long Shirua's training for him. Recently, he had been abused by the teacher from top to bottom. He had doubts about life. Emo Xiaofei looked at Shinji Nagato's sullen expression at this time, as if he was looking at himself during training. Could it be that I have actually become more powerful? After all, I still have the temperament of a teenager. But I really don't want to be entangled too much. I plan to end this boring battle directly. Let's use spirit shock. Emo Xiaofei's gaze locked on Shinji Nagato, and his eyes suddenly changed. Unexpectedly, at this moment, a feeling of weightlessness suddenly came. Emo Xiaofei looked down in astonishment, only to find that the floor he was standing on had suddenly opened up, revealing a big dark hole below. Gotcha! The floor that had been opened closed again in an instant, trapping him under the mechanism. Seeing that his opponent suddenly disappeared, Shinji Nagato looked at his father angrily. I can beat him! Master Nagato just said indifferently, our purpose is not to defeat him, but to capture him. As long as he can serve us, that's enough. Shinji Nagato's eyes widened at this time. I said, I can defeat him. Master Nagato snorted coldly, back off. Shinji Nagato gritted his teeth, his wrist trembling slightly as he gripped the hilt of his sword. In the end, he lowered his head angrily. Yes! Seeing Shinji Nagato turn around and leave, Master Nagato's eyes slightly narrowed. On the side, Saburo Nagato said slowly, Brother, Shensi is still young. It may not be good to be too strict. There was a rope beside Saburo Nagato. Just when Emo Xiaofei stood on the mechanism, it was Saburo Nagato who pulled the rope to activate the mechanism. I don't need you to intervene in how I teach him. Master Nagato glanced at Saburo Nagato casually and said in a deep voice, You coward, shut up! Yes. Saburo Nagato adjusted his sitting posture, facing Master Nagato, and nodded vigorously. He was the master of the Nagato family and had the absolute right to speak. In the entire Nagato family, no one dared to disobey Master Nagato. As the successor, Shinji Nagato dared not. As the younger brother, he could not do it. Despite the dissatisfaction in his heart, he could only bow his head in the face of Master Nagato, who held the power of the Nagato family. Master Nagato snorted coldly again at this time. He looked at the position of the mechanism and muttered, I don't know the origin of this Kojiro. Just watching the duel between him and Shinji, I know that he must be a master. He was separated from his companions, so he came here. Saburo Nagato quickly said at this time, Big brother, no matter whether he is powerful or not, as long as he is trapped down there, he will naturally have no strength after being hungry for a few days. At that time, we can do whatever we want to him. Just like those who resisted in the past, in the end, didn't they obediently submit? Master Nagato nodded slowly and said, That Shizuko seemed to be planning to keep it for himself at first. If someone didn't see him and come to report to me, this person broke the rules. You go and deal with him. Saburo Nagato nodded, but his face was a little ugly. Master Nagato suddenly smiled coldly, looked at Saburo Nagato, and joked, Why? Your hands are so dirty. Do you still have a clean place in your heart? You don't want to? No. Saburo Nagato sighed and stood up. I'll deal with it now. Watching Saburo Nagato finally push the door and go out, Master Nagato said coldly at this time, You should die on the battlefield. This is the highest glory for you and the Nagato family. Saburo Nagato's face changed slightly. In the end, he lowered his head and pulled the door close. Master Nagato finally called again, "Coward." He then walked to the mechanism and stepped on it a few times with his feet, making a thumping sound. Knowing that this mechanism could not be opened from below, Master Nagato smiled coldly and left with his hands behind his back. Saburo Nagato picked up something at the entrance and prepared to go out. But at this time, his clothes seemed to be pulled by something. He looked back and saw a little girl of 4 or 5 years old. Her face was like a porcelain doll, delicate and flawless. The little girl raised her head and rubbed her eyes. She seemed too sleepy. "Father, where are you going?" Saburo Nagato irritably slapped away the little girl's palm that grabbed his clothes. At this time, he glanced behind the little girl. An old maid quickly stepped forward. The maid looked at Saburo Nagato with a faint fear. "Master Saburo, the previous movement was a little loud. It woke Miss Tsuruko up. I can't coax her to sleep." "Take her back." Saburo Nagato shouted in a deep voice. "How did you take care of her? Is it because she is too comfortable?" "No, no." The maid apologized again and again. She directly picked up the young Miss Tsuruko, hurriedly turned and walked to the end of the corridor. Saburo Nagato frowned. At this time, it was drizzling outside the house. He was more irritated, so he put on a bamboo hat and went out. Dong dong. Hearing the voice from above, Emo Xiaofei rubbed his chin, letting his body slowly descend. The moment of weightlessness did cause his body to fall. However, it didn't take long for him to stabilize his body in the air. Emo Xiaofei didn't break the mechanism immediately because he heard some strange noises coming from below. Emo Xiaofei finally felt a chill from his feet. It was water. Right below the cave, there should be a pit filled with water that had been dug out by someone. Emo Xiaofei estimated that the distance from the top to the bottom was about 6 or 7 meters. If a person suddenly fell, he or she might break his or her limbs. However, with this puddle, he or she would not suffer much damage. But it was too dark here. He could not find any light source at all. Emo Xiaofei had to give up his sight directly and turned to sense through sound wave. Long Shirua said that the psychic ability was ever-changing and had many applications. As for how to apply it, he would develop it himself. At this time, Emo Xiaofei was using an ability that he developed himself. He made sounds by knocking, and his sense of hearing captured these sounds. Through the transmission of sound, the reflection of different vibrations, and so on, everything was formed in his mind. In fact, it was similar to the ability of a bat. So, after a few extreme palms, a three-dimensional communication of the surroundings was formed in Emo Xiaofei's mind. He found that this place was not sealed. At least next to the dug puddle, there was a place to land. At the same time, there was a flow of air. It was a door. At the end of the passage about 3 meters long, Emo Xiaofei felt the existence of a door. He walked directly to the door, reached out, and knocked on it. He found that the door was actually made of stone. There were many traces of different depths on the stone door. It seemed to be scratched by a sharp weapon. Perhaps this was left by the people of Nagato family who fell down like him. Maybe they were also samurai. They intended to use samurai swords to split this stone door, but it was in vain in the end. Emo Xiaofei moved. With his strength, he could not shake the huge stone door with this weight. He shook his head and simply concentrated. He only felt that his spiritual power seemed to be drawn by something and consumed a lot. Emo Xiaofei did not care too much. He only heard a rumbling sound in front of him. The stone door was also opened little by little under the push of the psychic power. Finally, there was a gap that allowed people to pass through. Emo Xiaofei stopped and felt unusually tired at the same time. How heavy is this door? It's so tiring? Emo Xiaofei wiped the sweat on his forehead. Just moving this stone door felt more tiring than 10 hours of continuous training in the underground training ground of the pet hospital. But the place exposed after the stone door was moved surprised Mo Xiaofei. First of all, there was already light here. The light source was the oil lamp hanging on the wall. There was a long passage in front. On both sides of the passage there were stone rooms. The stone rooms were completely open. Huge and thick wooden bars formed a fence inlay. It looked like a prison cell. Mo Xiaofei frowned and looked at some of the prison cells. There were some clothes placed in some of them. He even found a set of bones in one of the cells. In another place, he found a large number of torture instruments. Some of the torture instruments even turned vermilion. That was the dried blood stains. This was a punishment. It was a torture chamber that had been used many times. What the hell is going on? Even with Mo Xiaofei's courage, he couldn't help but feel a chill at the creepiness of this place at this time. This chill rose directly from the soles of his feet to the nape of his neck. Mo Xiaofei turned around abruptly because he felt that something was approaching him at this time. What the hell? Mo Xiaofei shouted loudly. Your Highness Kojiro. It was a woman's voice. Mo Xiaofei was stunned. He saw that the person who appeared here at this moment was the girl who had temporarily cooperated with him, Haim Doji. Goddess, why are you? Mo Xiaofei recognized the person and secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He could only blame the atmosphere of this place for being too weird. He couldn't help but feel nervous. Why are you here? Your Highness Kojiro has been out for a long time. I'm a little worried, so I came to take a look. Haim Doji said indifferently. I happened to see Your Highness Kojiro being plotted against by the head of the Nagato family. He fell into this trap, so I came to rescue him. Mo Xiaofei thought for a while, and then asked suspiciously, then? What about Master Nagato and the others? Haim Doji shook her head and said, I didn't intend to let them see. Takama Jiehara has a rule that we can't show in front of mortals casually. Of course, Your Highness Kojiro is powerful, so naturally, it doesn't count. Mo Xiaofei didn't think much and asked directly, by the way, goddess, I asked you to help me check the situation of bamboo. Do you have any results? What curse is it? Haim Doji frowned. It's strange. I have carefully checked, but I couldn't find any evil aura from this village girl. You know, any curse power is bound to give birth to evil aura. But this village girl didn't have it. No. Mo Xiaofei was stunned, but looking at the appearance of bamboo and the attitude of the villagers, it's obvious that this is the case. Haim Doji nodded. This is also the reason why I feel strange. Therefore, in addition to the village girl you asked, I quietly checked a lot of village girls, but I still didn't find anything. At most, these village girls' aura is messy. But it's because they often have sex with different men and are contaminated with some men's aura. That's why it's messy. Speaking of this, Haim Doji's face was a little gloomy. Probably because the goddess was pure, she was very resistant to such messy aura. But even the goddess couldn't find anything. Was this curse really so powerful? There seems to be someone here. Mo Xiaofei looked in one direction at this time. When I fell, I vaguely heard something, so I didn't leave this trap immediately. This place seems to be a place where lynchings are abused. I'm afraid it's a victim of the Nagato family's plot. I have to go and check it out. Haim Doji just nodded. Mo Xiaofei then walked quickly in the direction he sensed. Most of the structures here were crooked like prison cells. He didn't know how they were built, and the sound was also clearer. The deeper he went, the faster the air flowed, blowing the oil lamps on the stone walls on both sides. The flame flickered, and the shadows of a person and a god were constantly changing. There's really someone here. At the end of the path, there was another prison cell with a small window. A figure was sitting on the ground at this time. It was a woman in a gray kimono, but the woman's back was facing, and her hair was disheveled. He couldn't see her face clearly. Emo Xiaofei saw her shoulders trembling slightly, and some strange sounds came from her body. He approached the fence. Are you okay? Hee. A weird laugh. The woman suddenly turned around and rushed to the front of the fence. With the help of the oil lamps here, he couldn't see the woman's age at all. But her lips and teeth were dripping with blood. Her hands grabbed the wooden bars of the fence at the same time, and one of her hands even grabbed a rat. She just swallowed the rat alive. He. She was still laughing, tilting her head and widening her eyes. Her eyeballs seemed to be completely protruding out, which was horrifying. Hee. Emo Xiaofei instinctively took a step back and bumped into Jiu Jiming, who was behind him. Sorry, I didn't mean it. What happened to you? At this moment, Haim Dojia's face was pale, and she was about to fall to the ground. She raised her head and looked at Emo Xiaofei, saying weakly, Little Jiro, Your Highness, there's something strange here. My divine power is disappearing. What? Emo Xiaofei felt a strong dizziness after hearing that. He struggled for a few times and finally fell to the ground like Haim Dojiu. The last sight. It was still the crazy woman in the prison cell, staring at him with her eyes wide open and her mouth full of blood. Consciousness began to lose. Consciousness began to recover. Emo Xiaofei opened his eyes and shook his head hard. The surrounding light was a bit dazzling, which made him unable to adapt to it. He got up, but didn't know when he had left the huge underground prison, and came to the forest outside. Why is this place so familiar? Emo Xiaofei gave a start, and then he saw a girl carrying a wicker basket, walking with her head lowered worriedly on the road ahead. Emo Xiaofei opened his mouth. The girl he saw was obviously Bamboo. She was the first person he met when he entered the unripe rice village. Bamboo, are you okay? Why are you here? Emo Xiaofei quickly rushed forward and asked. The girl. Bamboo raised her head at this time and looked at him in horror. She quickly took a step back and said in fear, Who are you? I'm Emo Kojiro. Sasaki Kojiro. Emo Xiaofei quickly said, I had dinner at your house last night. Have you forgotten? Last night. Bamboo frowned and shook her head blankly. I saw you for the first time. Why were you at my house last night? Chapter 696. The stone steps that went up the mountain had been built for an unknown period of time. The mottled moss on the stone steps looked like a special pattern, but the boss and the maid knew that these stone steps were not gemstones. After passing through the vermilion torii, they climbed up about 100 steps. This extremely long staircase was considered to be completed. The sun had not yet emerged from the mountains, but the sky was already slightly bright. After finally climbing halfway up the mountain where the shrine was located, Luochio looked back. The village below had become very small. The appearance of the shrine was not much different from what Luochio imagined. A box was placed in front, probably used to hold the tribute money of the worshippers. As for the left side, there was a wooden fence with many wooden signs hanging on it. New Year's wishes. The villagers of Unripe Rice Village would come to worship every new year, then write their wishes for the coming year and hang them here. Luochio seemed to be very interested. He walked directly to the wooden fence and looked at it carefully. The sky gradually brightened. In the early morning, it was the quietest time. However, some birds living in the mountain forest rushed into the sky from the distant mountain forest in flocks at this time. So many crows. Yi looked at them flying away. She seemed a little unhappy. After all, the crow's cry was not as pleasant as the oriole's. In people's inherent beliefs, it seemed to represent ominous things. However, for the club's boss and maid, there was no such thing as ominous. So, it could only be described as not beautiful. Luochio just smiled. After looking at the prayers on the signs hanging on the wooden fence, he walked directly to the front of the shrine. He suddenly said with interest, People worship the gods to get blessings. If we also worship, I don't know if they can bless us. Bless what? Perhaps even whether they had the courage to show up was a problem. Yu shook her head slightly. Luochu stopped this topic and looked at the bell hanging in front. After people put down the tribute money, they would shake the bell here sincerely. There was even a requirement for the number of times. Everything had a rigorous and pious process. Who are you? The one who asked this question was the witch who was in charge of guarding the shrine. She walked over from the other side of the wooden railings where the prayer signs were placed. There was also a stone-paved path on the other side, which seemed to lead to the back of the shrine. She wasn't very old. She was wearing a plain kimono and carrying a small wooden bucket in her hand. Her hair seemed to be very long, almost reaching her heels, but at this moment it was wet. Boss Luo's eyesight was very good, and naturally, Miss Maid's eyesight wasn't bad either, so she could easily see the trace of water vapor on Miko's body. Perhaps it was because he had just finished washing. Luo Qiu nodded at the witch with a smile. Hello. A trace of doubt flashed across Miko-sama's face, but she nodded at the same time and slowly walked over with the wooden barrel. She was a little surprised because this couple's attire was very strange. But Miko-sama had also encountered something even stranger and more unbelievable. That was why he was curious, but he wasn't too surprised. Are you from another village? With the help of the increasingly bright light in the sky, Miko-sama could already see the couple's appearance clearly. She had grown up in this land since she was a child, so she had a deep impression of the people who lived here. Whether they were strangers or not, she could recognize them at a glance. Kind of, just passing by. Luochu nodded. Miko-sama was very young, even younger than she was 5 years ago, so her body was very petite, like a girl who couldn't grow up. But her hair was really long black hair, straight because of washing, and water droplets were still dripping from the ends. She was even more confused, but still asked politely, "Do you want to worship?" "No." Luochu shook his head. "I want to be blessed, but the gods may not be able to give me." Miko-sama was surprised and opened her mouth slightly. In front of Miko-sama and Miko-sama, who guarded the shrine, saying such words seemed to be disrespectful to the gods. She should be angry, but in fact, she wasn't. She looked at the sky and knew that it was very early, so she was puzzled by the couple who came up at this time. It took a long time to walk up from the foot of the mountain. Therefore, they might have come up before dawn or even before that. Since you don't want to worship, then please leave. Miko-sama didn't intend to blame the two for their disrespect to the gods, but her attitude was a little cold. However, she was really too young. This trace of coldness did not seem like an iceberg. Instead, it seemed to have a hint of anger. "Can I walk around?" Boss Luo thought for a while. "I won't touch anything here. I promise." "Suit yourself," Miko-sama said indifferently, then glanced at Luochu and suddenly said, "But you'd better leave this place as soon as possible." "So it's because I didn't worship?" Luochu asked apologetically. Miko-sama shook her head. "It's dangerous for a man to stay in this village, especially when you're an outsider." "Dangerous?" "That's all I have to say." Miko-sama picked up the bucket again and walked into the shrine through the front door. Luochu heaved a sigh of relief, looking at the door that was finally closed. Speaking of danger, the prayer signs hanging on the wooden railings were probably more dangerous, right? "I don't know how Erex is preparing," Boss Luo said suddenly. Yu said softly, "Erex only needs us to control one of the people he thinks is in order to save more real souls in this pseudo-world. Since the requirements aren't high, I naturally need to make more preparations." Boss Luo smiled, looking at the position of the stone steps leading up. "The first one to come is him." A shadow was running fast on the steep stone steps. Red robe, silver hair. It was Xuefeng, a half-monster in this world. But Xuefeng was obviously not alone. He was carrying an unconscious woman on his back at this time. Xuefeng always found injured and unconscious people when he went out. He also felt quite helpless. Last time it was Zixing. Because he sensed the weak monster power of Zixing, as a monster, Xuefeng naturally couldn't treat her as an ordinary person. As for this time, this unconscious and injured woman didn't seem to be an ordinary person. Is anyone here? Just as they reached the end of the stone steps, wind-chasing Wolf hurriedly shouted. The reason why he came to this place was because of some memories left in his body. Is anyone here? Zhuefeng took a few steps closer at this time and shouted again at the door of the shrine. At this time, the ears on his head trembled slightly. This was because he heard the sound of footsteps. As expected, not long after, a young shaman in a white kimono opened the door. Her hair was still wet. Inuyasha. His ears were so sensitive that Zhuefeng easily heard the name that the witch said in a very soft voice. But the witch frowned at the same time and seemed a little unhappy. Inuyasha, why are you still here? I have already said. Who is the person behind you? Zhuefeng didn't know what the relationship between Inuyasha and this witch was. He just came here based on the guidance of his body's memory. Of course, he also had some ideas of discovering some clues about this bizarre incident. I don't know. Zhuefeng shook his head and said, I picked her up on the road. She was seriously injured and unconscious. Can you help me take a look? The witch tilted her head and thought for a while, then nodded. Bring her in. Wind-chasing Wolf hurriedly carried the person on his back and bypassed the boxes used for worship and walked into the shrine. But just as he put her down, before he had time to take a closer look at the interior of the shrine, he heard the voice of the witch. Just put her down. You can go out. The witch's attitude was a bit too tough. Zhuefeng didn't know why he had a thought of retreat, a kind of mentality that he himself felt incredible fear. Strange. Until the witch closed the door, Zhuefeng sat alone on the wooden ladder in front of the door, still feeling very confused. Perhaps this Inuyasha was very afraid of this woman? Zhuefeng couldn't figure it out a little. He looked around in boredom and saw many signs hanging on the wooden fence next to him. Because he was too bored, he came forward, rubbed his chin, and tilted his head to look at them. What is written? Next year harvest. I hope to be born a son? These words mean son, right? After a while, the voice of the witch suddenly came from the shrine. Inuyasha! Zhuefeng quickly approached, but the door was still closed. He could only listen and ask, What's the matter? Where did you meet this woman? On the road. Zhuefeng thought for a moment. On the way to the village. By the way, is this woman incurable? She won't die for the time being, but she's seriously injured. And she seems to. Seems to what? The head of the storm chaser, Uncle Zhuefeng, was burning with curiosity. But there was no sound at the door, but he heard the sound of footsteps. Zhuefeng curiously put his ear on the door, trying to listen more carefully. Unexpectedly, the door was opened at once. Zhuefeng could only take 2 steps back awkwardly. I didn't eavesdrop. You still haven't changed. You don't know how to be polite. The voice of the witch was a little sullen. Zhuefeng was shocked. Of course, this sullen voice didn't scare him, but the thing in the woman's hand made him feel danger. It was a longbow that the woman took from somewhere. She even had a quiver on her back. A long arrow was already on the longbow, and the sharp arrowhead was pointing straight at him. Wait, what do you want to do? I said, if you dare to step into this place again, I will kill you. As soon as she finished speaking, the witch released her finger, and the sharp arrow shot through the air, flying past Zhuefeng's cheek. It was so fast that he couldn't react. Hey! I have no enmity with you. What do you mean? Zhuefeng frowned. I will hit humans, regardless of whether they are men or women. Miko snorted coldly and took out another arrow, knocking it and releasing it once more. This time, Zhuefeng reacted. Without thinking, he stretched out his hand and caught the arrow. But he didn't expect that the arrow shaft would suddenly burn. It hurts. Zhuefeng threw the arrow away at once and glanced at his palm. The flesh on his palm was even burned, and it looked bloody. What a stupid guy. You dare to catch my arrow with your hand. The witch said coldly at this time, Inuyasha, you are really the stupidest monster. Damn woman, Don't think I will be afraid of you. Watch me. Juefeng was obviously irritated, and he jumped out in an instant. But at this time, the witch shot another arrow. This damn woman's arrow seemed to be a lot faster. Juefeng twisted his body in midair and narrowly avoided the arrow. But the sharp arrowhead also cut his clothes. With a snap, something fell from his clothes. A book. After Juefeng woke up, he had put a book on his body. But Juefeng didn't care about this kind of thing. He only felt that this damn woman's arrow was too dangerous, so he quickly pulled away and looked at her vigilantly. The witch frowned. She walked out of the shrine and picked up the book on the ground. After glancing at it, she looked at Juefeng and asked coldly, "What do you mean?" "For you." Juefeng just finished speaking and was stunned for an instant. These words were blurted out, not what he wanted to say. You still remember?" The witch glanced at it again, but her expression was a little complicated. Yes." Wind-chasing wolf nodded. It seemed that the other party was going to stop because of the book. Juefeng was naturally not stupid. He simply nodded generously. "Well, I have been carrying it with me. It should be no, it is to bring it to you." The witch didn't say anything. She took the book and put down the longbow in her hand. She turned and walked into the shrine. "Wait a minute, what do you mean?" She looked back and said indifferently, "You can go. Don't come back in the future. If you come again, I will kill you." "Wait a minute, I have something to ask you." Juefeng quickly asked, "Have you seen someone called Zixing? She is about the same height as you. By the way, she is very beautiful." "Get lost." A sharp arrow was nailed to Juefeng's foot in an instant. The arrow even continued to exude a kind of terrifying aura that made Juefeng tremble in fear. Juefeng swallowed his saliva subconsciously, but when he saw that the door of the shrine was closed, he quietly moved his foot away. "This damn woman is so scary." Juefeng scratched his head and simply retreated, and then quickly left this place. Since he woke up, there was a strange thought in his mind, but when he gave the book, this strange thought disappeared. Chapter 697. There were a total of 15 well-equipped light footmen, 2 samurai with the family name, 5 attendants, and 1 maidservant. Miss Tsukiheim of the Kondo family was traveling. In the eyes of the 2 samurai, such reliance could not be described as exaggerated at all. It was even far from enough. Although such a lineup was enough to deal with ordinary bandits, it was far from enough to deal with evil monsters. This was an era that was filled with monsters. "Miss Tsukiheim, we have entered Unripe Rice Village." A samurai of the main family came to the carriage. Zixing opened the curtains and saw the tenant farmers who were working in the paddy field next to them. At this time, they were looking at them in amazement. Zixing ordered, "Call one of them over. I have something to ask." "Yes." The samurai nodded and rode to the paddy field. Soon after, the samurai of the main family returned with a panicked but calm middle-aged tenant farmer. "Answer Miss Tsukiheim's question properly." "Yes, lord." The tenant farmer didn't even dare to raise his head and knelt directly in front of the carriage. Madame Purple Star was unfazed by such a gesture. As a true monster and the proud young master of the greedy wolf clan, she was a respectable existence. She had seen too many of her own kind kneeling before her, let alone ignorant humans. "Where is Nagato's house?" Zixing asked directly. The tenant farmer quickly said, "It's just ahead, about 3 miles away." The tenant farmer said carefully, fearing that he would say something wrong. He really couldn't understand who would look for Master Nagato. Looking at the convoy's reliance, it was much more impressive than Master Nagato's house. Zixing quickly nodded and waved her hand to let the samurai take the tenant down. Then, she ordered another samurai in front to go to Nagato's house. "This is your reward." The samurai threw a little money in front of the tenant farmer. The tenant farmer naturally gratefully took it with both hands and watched the team slowly leave. It was just that the tenant farmer looked at the heavy small money bag in his hand. He should have been happy, but he couldn't be happy. He shook his head and casually threw the money pouch into the basket. He just left it beside the paddy field, not afraid that someone would secretly take it away. For the people of Unripe Rice Village, no amount of wealth was comparable to 3 meals a day. After all, they couldn't leave the village. And in the village, they were already self-sufficient. There was nothing they could desire. Nagato Family Mansion. When the Kondo family's Tsukiheim's team stopped in front of the door, they saw Master Nagato and others standing in front of the door. Some of the servants even had a hint of hurry. They were not prepared for such a greeting. "Are you the head of the Nagato family?" The samurai of the Kondo family stepped forward and asked arrogantly. Master Nagato nodded respectfully and quickly said, "I didn't know that Miss Tsukiheim would come." But the servants saw the family emblem of the Kondo family from afar and came to report, so he hurriedly led the family to greet them. However, in a very short time, so many people were able to gather and greet them. Although it didn't seem neat, it was still acceptable. The samurai of the Kondo family probably knew this, so he didn't blame them too much. He just nodded proudly, then said, "Miss Tsukiheim plans to stay here for a few days. You go and prepare." Master Nagato naturally did not dare to disobey. He quickly ordered the servants to clean up the last room. He had to do this because the Kondo family owned the entire Mount Famine. They had a fief near Mount Famine. The place near Unripe Rice Village that the Nagato family obtained was also obtained by the ancestors from the Kondo family's reward. Speaking of which, the surname Nagato was also given by the Kondo family. Therefore, for the request of Miss Tsukiheim of the Kondo family, how could the Nagato family dare to say no? It's just, why did this high and mighty Princess Tsukiheim suddenly come to such a remote place? Master Nagato frowned deeply because of this. He subconsciously thought of Saburo Nagato. Is it because of Saburo? Fortunately, after receiving the servant's report, he quickly asked Saburo Nagato to leave for a while, so he was not here. Saburo Nagato claimed that he was injured on the battlefield, so the commander ordered him to go home to recuperate. He was a samurai who had made meritorious service. But how could Saburo Nagato's wording be hidden from Master Nagato, who watched him grow up? Everything was just a lie of Saburo Nagato, a deserter on the battlefield. But, since he already knew all this, in order to maintain the reputation of the Nagato family, Master Nagato had to cover up his identity as a deserter. As the head of the Nagato family, Master Nagato was almost the only person qualified to bring people for the Kondo family's princess. But despite this, Master Nagato still did not dare to walk side by side with Tsukiheim Kondo. Instead, he was slightly slower by half a step. In this era, the hierarchy was extremely strict. He did not dare to cross half a step, even if it was just a woman in front of him. "I don't know why Miss Tsukiheim came in person?" Master Nagato asked carefully. "Tsukiheim Kondo." Zixing just looked at the courtyard outside the corridor, seemingly unwilling to answer Master Nagato's question. At this time, Zixing suddenly stopped and said calmly, "Who is that?" In the courtyard, a little girl was squatting by the pond, and beside the little girl was a maid. Master Nagato looked and quickly lowered his head. "Miss Tsukiheim, that is Tsuruko, the daughter of my younger brother, Saburo." "Tsuruko? Tsuruko Nagato?" Zixing whispered the name. "It's Tsuruko Nagato, Miss Tsukiheim." Master Nagato quickly responded. Although he didn't know why the princess of the Kondo family would ask such an obvious question, he couldn't ignore the words of the princess of the Kondo family. He heard that the head of the Kondo family intended to choose a husband for Miss Tsukiheim. Of course, this husband couldn't get everything of the Kondo family, but their child had this qualification. So, if Tsuruko... At this time, Master Nagato suddenly shouted, then waved his hand as if he wanted Tsuruko to come over, but he didn't expect the little girl to hide behind the maid. She only dared to poke out a small half of her head and looked at him timidly. Master Nagato frowned and saw that Miss Tsukiheim's expression was calm. She didn't seem to be unhappy, so he quickly said, Miss Tsukiheim, please forgive me. Tsuruko is still young and doesn't know etiquette. I will discipline her in the future. However, I can guarantee that Tsuruko must not dislike Miss Tsukiheim. She is just a little afraid of strangers. This child has lost her mother since she was a child, and she has not been well taken care of, so her personality, Zixing said calmly, is she really just afraid of strangers? Master Nagato met Miss Tsukiheim's gaze. Rumor had it that Miss Tsukiheim was weak, but her gaze was a bit sharper than the head of the Kondo family he saw when he was young. Could it be that the rumor was wrong? Zixing's words made Master Nagato feel overwhelmed. Master Nagato's gaze quickly turned. A servant of the Nagato family came in front of him, so he quickly said, Miss Tsukiheim, the room has been cleaned up. Please come with me. Zixing flicked her sleeves and walked in front. Master Nagato secretly breathed a sigh of relief, but he waved to the maid in the courtyard and asked the maid to take Tsuruko Nagato away as soon as possible. At this time, Master Nagato also called another servant and whispered, Hurry up and let Shinji come over. Remember to let him dress neatly and don't make a fool of himself. After giving the order, he quickly chased after Saburo Nagato. As for Saburo Nagato, since the welcome, Master Nagato once again asked the servant to remind him that it was best not to appear. Not many people knew that Saburo Nagato was a deserter. In this era where consultation was not developed, as long as the news was blocked well, it might be able to be hidden forever. However, the person who came was from the Kondo family after all. Master Nagato was afraid that the news would be leaked. This Miss Tsukiheim is not easy to deal with. Recalling Tsukiheim Kondo's gaze on him just now, Master Nagato couldn't help but look a little dignified. He thought about the various possibilities of this princess's arrival, and he was very irritated. Soon after, Zixing had settled down. At this time, Master Nagato was kneeling in front of Zixing. He lowered his gaze and quietly listened to the instructions of this big shot. Zixing asked calmly, Master Nagato, I wonder if there are any outsiders in Unripe Rice Village recently? Outsiders? Master Nagato raised his head and asked carefully, I wonder why Miss Tsukiheim asked this? You just have to answer me. Master Nagato said slowly, As far as I know, there are no outsiders. Unripe Rice Village is almost at the end of Feynman Mountain. Even traveling merchants rarely come back. Are you sure? Zixing looked at Master Nagato again and asked. It's this kind of gaze again. This kind of gaze is like looking down from the clouds. For some reason, Master Nagato's heart trembled slightly. He lowered his head and said, Maybe there is. After all, I can't always pay attention to the road into the village. But Miss Tsukiheim, please rest assured. I will immediately order someone to go to the village and ask. I wonder if Miss Tsukiheim is looking for someone? If there are outsiders coming in these few days, or if there are outsiders in the village, bring them to see me. Zixing was too lazy to say more and directly ordered. Yes. Master Nagato nodded quickly and agreed. At this time, a servant pushed the door open and knelt all the way to Master Nagato's ear. He whispered a few words. Master Nagato said seriously, Miss Tsukiheim, it's my son. He is outside and wants to see you. No need. Zixing waved her hand. I'm tired. I want to rest. Don't let unnecessary people disturb me. This. Master Nagato suddenly hesitated. But the samurai of the Kondo family said solemnly at this time, Nagato, didn't you hear Master Tsukiheim's order? Step back. Yes. Master Nagato could only leave respectfully. He couldn't resist the huge power of the Kondo family. Outside the door, Shinji Nagato frowned. When he was about to ask, Master Nagato scolded, Get back! Shinji Nagato seemed to want to say something, but under Master Nagato's terrifying gaze, he finally clenched his fist. He didn't dare to walk with his father. He could only leave the yard alone from the other side. But after taking 2 steps, he saw his uncle, Saburo Nagato. "Uncle, why are you here?" Shinji Nagato asked puzzledly. He heard some news from the servants. It seemed that his father asked his uncle not to show up for the time being. "Isn't it ugly?" Saburo Nagato had a gloating expression on his face at this time. "Uncle Saburo, what do you want to say?" Shinji Nagato frowned. He didn't like this uncle very much, especially after he returned from the battlefield. Saburo Nagato shook his head. "I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about your father. When he came out of the Kondo family's lady's place just now, his face must have been ugly." "Uncle Saburo, I don't think we should discuss my father here." Shinji Nagato still frowned. "We shouldn't talk about the head of the Nagato family. This is a crime of disrespect. Also, Uncle Saburo, you smell of alcohol. Go back and rest." At this time, Saburo Nagato's face was full of whiskers. He leaned against the wall with a wine pot in his hand. His lapel was open, looking like a prodigal who wandered in the red light district. Saburo Nagato took a sip from the wine bottle, squinted his eyes as if he was enjoying it, and then smirked. "Here, my elder brother is the sky. He has the absolute right to speak. No one in the entire Nagato family can go against him. However, his sky is still too small after all. When little Tion met big Tion, that was the only way." "Shinji, look clearly. Your father is not as powerful and perfect as you think." "Uncle Saburo, you are really drunk." Shinji Nagato's tone was heavy. "Really?" Saburo Nagato continued to smirk, but he staggered and walked. "Maybe. Living here, sometimes it's better to be confused. Being too sober is—" On the contrary, Shinji Nagato couldn't hear what he said later. Perhaps Saburo Nagato still had something to say. Seeing Saburo Nagato finally disappear at the end of the promenade, Shinji Nagato subconsciously recalled his father's exasperated expression just now. Too small a sky, Shinji Nagato was secretly distracted, but he suddenly felt his clothes being pulled by something. He looked back and found that it was Chizuko Nagato. The little girl only reached his waist. At this time, her small hand pulled his sleeve. "Play with me. Go away." Shinji Nagato suddenly waved his hand and slapped Chizuko's hand away. Chizuko Nagato screamed in pain, and her frightened eyes began to mist. Shinji Nagato was irritated. He lifted his foot and kicked Chizuko Nagato to the ground. Chizuko Nagato rolled down the floor and into the courtyard outside the promenade. "Miss Chizuko." The maid hurriedly ran over in horror and helped Chizuko Nagato, who was kicked to the ground, up. Chizuko Nagato's forehead was bright red. It was the wound caused by her forehead hitting the gravel when she landed. "Master Shinji, Miss Chizuko is still young. She offended you." The maid hugged Chizuko Nagato and looked at the heir of the Nagato family with a trembling voice. "Humph," Shinji Nagato said coldly. "Woman, don't come out. Stay in the room." After that, Shinji Nagato flicked his sleeves and left. "Miss Chizuko, are you okay? Hurry up, I'll take you back to bandage." The maid put Chizuko Nagato down and hurriedly tidied up Chizuko Nagato's clothes. She kept saying sadly, "Really, how can I do this to you? Really, does it hurt? Shio, play with me." Blood flowed from Chizuko Nagato's forehead, falling from her eyebrows, and forking at the bridge of her nose. It was like the curved water vein on the map. The maid, Shio, looked at it. Her nose was sour, and she hugged Chizuko Nagato tightly. She choked and said, "Okay, Shio will play with Miss Chizuko." Zixing was meditating in the room. At this time, a samurai pushed the door open and knelt in the corridor outside the door. He said with a solemn expression, "Master Tsukiheim, we found a peeper outside." Zixing slowly opened her eyes and frowned slightly. "Peeper? Is it the Nagato family?" Chapter 698. Under the cherry blossom tree on the hillside. Strictly speaking, this place was like the origin of the Yenwuyue world, the jade pillar of heaven. Not only mortals, but even ordinary so-called gods, could not set foot in this place. Even Izanagi or Izanami couldn't come here easily. Of course, Izanagi and Izanami wouldn't leave Yahiro Nodon easily. Similarly, Erex couldn't step into Yahiro Nodon easily. As early as when Erex invaded Yenwuyue and stole nearly one-third of the world's original rules, the two sides were already in an irreconcilable opposition. Erex, who was drinking black tea leisurely, was slightly awake at this time. A petite figure had already arrived under the cherry blossom tree. It was a young girl in a kimono, Mickey. However, Mickey was not the only one. At this time, Mickey was also holding another woman with both hands. A small katana was inserted in the chest position. It was Amaterasu Amikami with a beautiful face. "How did you do it?" Erex asked curiously. He was not like a more leisurely boss who had the ability to know everything. Although he could guess it, he could not be detailed to every step. Okashime. Mickey looked a little proud and smiled slightly. She planned to go back and report. I intercepted her on the way, and then replaced her to approach Amaterasu. At the same time, Mickey released her hands forward. At this time, Amaterasu Amikami, who was held by her, slowly floated in front of Erex. "It's also a masterpiece." Erex's fingers gently swept across the delicate face of Amaterasu Amikami, but he finally pulled out the small katana inserted in Amaterasu's body. Mickey looked at Erex's action inexplicably and frowned. "Erex-sama, Amaterasu inherited part of the world's authority of the two lords. Don't you intend to absorb it? You said that Amaterasu inherited the authority of Izanagi and Izanami. Since they are the source, it's really not good to take it now. Otherwise, it will be discovered immediately." Erex smiled slightly and let the sleeping Amaterasu's body sink to the ground. At this moment, roots slowly extended from the soil under the cherry blossom tree. The root seemed to have a life of its own as it split open like the mouth of a beast. It swallowed Amaterasu, leaving only the head exposed. The tree root then stood upright, and then hardened, turning into a wooden pillar. "Of course, it's not that I won't absorb it. It's just that it's not time yet." Erex looked at it as if he was looking at another masterpiece. He suddenly sighed and said, "If we had more time, we could have done it more foolproof. But I didn't expect him to come so suddenly." Mickey frowned. "Arikal-sama, are you talking about that businessman?" Erex sat down again and said slowly, "You know, my original plan was to slowly devour Yenwuyue's world. This is the safest way. But since he's here, then even the safest method will be full of variables." Mickey shook her head. Erex said indifferently, "He or that place only helps customers. That is to say, no one will help. If I don't take action in advance, the guy in Yahirodano's perception of Yenwuyue's world will soon discover the arrival of this boss. If they reach a deal earlier than me, I'm afraid my efforts during this period will be in vain." Erex shook his head. He seemed a little discouraged, but it was more of a kind of helplessness. "So I have to give up part of the benefits, and I even need to advance my plan for this." "Arikal-sama, is that person really powerful here? Even you?" Mickey looked at him with doubts. She had walked to Erex and sat down. She rested her chin on her hands like a lotus flower and looked at him. "You don't understand." Erex shook his head and suddenly reached out to tidy up Mickey's bangs. "It's a mess." "It doesn't matter," Mickey said indifferently, but she was enjoying it. She then looked at Amaterasu Amikami, sleeping in the cherry blossom tree root, and suddenly said, "Arikal-sama, do you need to get Tsukuyumi and Susanoo together? I need you to become Amaterasu temporarily." Erex said, "Since Izanagi and Izanami intend to let Sanguiko take the lead to deal with me, how can I destroy this good thing?" Mickey said, "I will definitely help Arikal-sama fulfill your wish and successfully obtain Yenwuyue's world. Then I'll leave it to you. Mickey is really reliable." Erex smiled gently, then said, "Before leaving, go and eat something." And the girl raised her head with a happy face. Watching Mickey leave, Erex whispered to himself, "It's a pity that you didn't really kill Oziu Shaimaheim. After all, she still lacks experience. This is the so-called variable." He sighed faintly. "Then Mickey, to what extent can you do for me?" He suddenly took out the gift from the club owner. His fingers wrapped around the ribbon used for the packaging, hesitating whether to open it and take a look. Simply giving gifts to old customers. This was something that the previous owner would never do. Now the young new owner couldn't see it clearly. "If it's a surprise, I'll leave it for last. If it's not a surprise, opening it now will affect my mood." At the same time, in a room in the Nagato family, the samurai named Sasaki Kojiro was tied up at this time. He was pressed to the ground by a samurai of the Kondo family. "Don't try to struggle. Raise your head," the samurai of the Kondo family said fiercely at this time. "Speak. Who the hell sent you here? Is it the Nagato family? What is your purpose? Listen well, if you don't tell me, I'll let you experience what pain is." Sasaki Kojiro. Emo Xiaofei really raised his head at this time, looking at the calm woman sitting in front of him. She seems to be called Tsukihime Kondo? In his impression, this Tsukihime Kondo should also be one of the plot characters in the movie. But it's not right. This plot character shouldn't appear in Unripe Rice Village. According to the plot Emo Xiaofei knew, the modern heroine who transmigrated here did not appear in Unripe Rice Village at first, but somewhere else. The heroine would pass through the Kondo family's castle, and then it would be the popular scene of showing off with modern knowledge. Kondo Tsukihime's malnutrition and poor appetite were cured. So, why did Kondo Tsukihime come to Unripe Rice Village? Sure enough, only the characters were similar here, but the development was completely different. So, did the heroine in the movie exist in this world? In Emo Xiaofei's eyes, there was a hint of tiredness that was easy to see. At this time, the samurai of the Kondo family saw that the peeper didn't speak for a long time, so he planned to use some necessary means. "Since you are so stubborn, don't blame me for being rude," the samurai sneered. Emo Xiaofei's head was pressed to the ground at this time. He struggled, but he suddenly shouted, "Narakami, Narakami Kuna! Do you know her?" "I don't know what you are talking about." The samurai of the Kondo family snorted coldly and directly reached out to press Emo Xiaofei's neck. "Wait a minute." Unexpectedly, Miss Tsukihime of the Kondo family said calmly at this time, "Don't do it first. I have some questions to ask." "Yes." The samurai naturally would not disobey Miss Tsukihime's order and directly lifted Emo Xiaofei up. Tsukihime Kondo said calmly at this time, "Narakami Kuna, who is she to you?" The heroine really appeared. It seems that she has an intersection with Miss Tsukihime Kondo? Or, this Tsukihime Kondo is actually. Emo Xiaofei frowned and quickly thought about various possibilities. In the end, he decided to take a gamble. He took a deep breath and said, "Emo Xiaofei." Tsukihime Kondo did not have the slightest expression. "Chase Zhuifeng?" Emo Xiaofei tried again. However, Tsukihime Kondo's expression still did not change. Instead, she frowned. "I don't know what you are talking about, but obviously this is not an answer to my question." Tsukihime Kondo shook her head and waved her hand directly. "Take him down first. Watch him carefully. Don't let him run away." The samurai nodded immediately, then hurriedly asked, "Miss Tsukihime, about the Nagato family?" After all, this was caught in the Nagato family. The Nagato family must be involved. "Don't alert the enemy first," Tsukihime Kondo said calmly. "You and Zwa Bingwei check around later. This peeper will be guarded by the samurai. We will interrogate him later." Yes. Emo Xiaofei was carried away by the samurai of the Kondo family. He didn't seem to be afraid, but he looked tired. He was quickly taken to another room and was guarded by two samurai of the Kondo family. But Emo Xiaofei did not think of a way to escape. He just lay on the ground and closed his eyes. Soon after, Emo Xiaofei heard the sound of the door opening, and the voice of Tsukiheim Kondo. "You all go out first. I want to interrogate this prisoner personally." "But, Miss Tsukiheim, it's okay. Tie him to the pillar and make him unable to move." "Yes." When Tsukiheim Kondo walked in front of Emo Xiaofei had been tied up with a rope. He really couldn't move at all. Tsukiheim Kondo sized him up and suddenly asked in a low voice, "Cinema?" Emo Xiaofei originally didn't want to talk to this domineering young lady, but after hearing this, he opened his mouth and was quite excited. "You? What happened to you? Are you Sir Emo or Zhuifeng?" "I'm Emo Xiaofei." Sure enough, Zixing heaved a sigh of relief at this time, then looked back at the paper door behind her. She squatted down carefully, untied the rope on Emo Xiaofei, and whispered again, "Master Emo, please don't blame me. Although these warriors of the Kondo family obey my orders, they are also suspected of spying on you. If I suddenly recognize you, it will be strange. You and I are both trapped in this strange world. We need to be careful about everything until we find out the truth." "I didn't consider this." Emo Xiaofei shook his head with a wry smile, then sighed hard. "I thought I would never meet an acquaintance again in my life." Zixing nodded. She had thoroughly felt the hesitation of suddenly becoming another person and being in a completely strange world, so she comforted, "At least we have recognized each other, and it has only been a few days. Sir Emo, please don't worry too much. We will definitely find a solution." Emo Xiaofei looked at her in a daze. "A few days? Do you know how many days I have been here?" Zixing asked subconsciously. "A few days?" Emo Xiaofei took a deep breath. "A year? I have been in this place for a whole year. Moreover, I have been spending the same day over and over again. Do you know this? How is this possible?" Zixing was shocked. Emo Xiaofei said tiredly, "But the truth is in front of me. This year is like a nightmare that I will never wake up from. Until you appear. Do you know? In the year since I reincarnated on the same day, this is the first time you have appeared here. I almost collapsed. Otherwise, I wouldn't have approached here so impulsively." Zixing was silent for a moment. She could see that Emo Xiaofei was not lying. Since he was not lying, repeating the same nightmare for a whole year was indeed a great mental torture. "Sir Emo, I am very sympathetic to your experience," Zixing said seriously. "However, can you explain what you have encountered?" "The dungeon." Emo Xiaofei suddenly became excited. "The crazy woman locked in the dungeon. It's her. I can feel that the root of this nightmare. No, it's the starting point. The starting point is also the end. She is the beginning and end of this recurring nightmare. It's her. It's her. In this year, I have been in contact with her every day. Every time I return to the beginning. It's her. It's her. Definitely. Sir Emo, please calm down." Seeing Emo Xiaofei standing up with his eyes wide open and a ferocious look on his face, Purple Star reached out and pressed his shoulders. "You're not alone. I'm already here. So, calm down." "I'm sorry." Emo Xiaofei rubbed his forehead hard. "I really can't control myself recently. I'm sorry, I'm sorry." He took a few deep breaths and finally forced himself to calm down. "Yes, I need to calm down. Let me think about it. My memory is too chaotic. Let me think about it." Looking at the pale Emo Xiaofei, Zixing felt that this matter was getting weirder and weirder. The woman locked in the dungeon is probably Saburo Nagato's wife. Emo Xiaofei suddenly raised his head at this time and stared at Kondo Tsukiheim. "I have inquired countless times and finally came to this conclusion. If Tsukuyomi or Susanoo of the three noble sons of Yenwue were here, they would recognize at a glance that the woman in front of them was Amaterasu Amikami. Of course, if the two of the three noble sons were here, they probably wouldn't know who the other man and woman standing there were. It was halfway up the mountain where the unripe rice village shrine was located. To be precise, it was on the long stone steps, just past the vermilion torii. At this time, Boss Luo and Miss Maid just came down. Not long after Xuefeng was scared away by the Miko's arrow. What's the matter? Boss Luo looked at the ancient costume beauty standing in front of him and asked politely. But this Amaterasu Amikami sneered at this time. With just a wave of her hand, the trees on both sides of the stone steps grew wildly, directly oppressing Boss Luo and Miss Maid. Aren't you afraid that Eric will be angry? You should be the one on the cherry tree before, right? How should I address this young lady? Boss Luo still didn't move. The frantically oppressing trees stopped at once, and then slowly returned to their original appearance. Amaterasu Amikami had a strange smile at this time. She slowly said, I just came to see if you, who made Sir Eric pay such a high price, have the ability to help him. Luochu asked curiously, Mr. Eric, are you questioning me? That's really the first time I met you. It's not Sir Eric. Amaterasu Amikami snorted coldly. It's just that I don't believe it. Moreover, you dare to take away Sir's box. His most important thing. Unforgivable. Luochu shook his head and said, We didn't take it away. We just pawned it here. After the transaction is completed, Mr. Eric can retrieve his box. Of course, the premise is that the agreed transaction fee is enough. Humph. Amaterasu Amikami stepped forward step by step, whether it's the box or the 1/3 of the world's true souls that Sir promised. You can't take them away in the end. Just be a good helper for Sir, or else I'll let you reincarnate in a nightmare, so painful that you'd rather die. At this time, Miss Maid loosened her hand and a black flame appeared in her palm. That is to say, you intend to violate the spirit of the contract, right? Besides, no matter who you are, what you said just now was too rude. When was the last time he was unhappy? Chapter 699. Strictly speaking, Black Soul Envoy was a kind of salesperson. They had different personalities, so they generally had a high degree of freedom. Therefore, if a Black Soul Envoy encountered such a situation, the way to deal with it would be different. But if it was Miss Maid of the club, then there would be a way to deal with it. As a maid of the club, serving the master and protecting the safety and dignity of the master was something that had to be obeyed and was equivalent to an instinctive behavior. Even if Yu Yi could guess, with Eric's understanding of the club, how abnormal it was for him to allow a subordinate to provoke the club. Would Eric's have such poor control over his subordinates? Would this guy who had swallowed countless nightmares and knew the evil of people's hearts calculate the thoughts of his subordinates? Probably not. Did he have a plan in mind? Was there another purpose behind it? What did it matter? 100 years ago, some people who overestimated themselves thought that they could destroy the club by mobilizing all the forces that could be mobilized. In fact, it was just the previous owner who cultivated them. Cultivating them was just for better harvest. A large number of Black Soul Envoys died in the battle. It seemed that the club had suffered a great loss, but for the club, those dead Black Soul Envoys were only at the level of cannon fodder. It was just an alternative recycling of the achievements of the previous owner. Maybe the current owner wouldn't use the same operation method, or maybe the current owner wouldn't follow the path of the previous owner. There were many more possibilities, but what did it matter? Yu Yi only knew one thing. Her current owner was violated, even if it was only in words. But since he could say such words, it also meant that he had such thoughts. Whether it was just a deliberate probe or a real malicious intention, it didn't matter. The black flames scattered in Yu Ye's hand formed a long and narrow, cross-shaped sword, and the so-called battle was almost completed in an instant. Amaterasu Amikami only walked on the first step of the stone steps. Yes, she only lifted her leg and stepped on the first step. Her attacks and various means were still in preparation. Maybe if she was given one more second or even half a second, some good attacking means could be launched. But that was the fact, as if there was no such thing as reason that could be explained clearly. The cross sword formed by the black flames had pierced through the shoulder of Amaterasu Amikami. Amaterasu Amikami's eyes widened. In that instant it was as if all illusions had been broken. Her illusion had been broken, and she could no longer maintain the appearance of Amaterasu. She returned to her original appearance. She was a girl in a kimono, Mickey. The black flames in her body were erupting like a volcano, giving her the illusion that she would be incinerated in an instant. And yet it wasn't just a single strike. Her left shoulder was pierced through, but her right shoulder was also pierced through at the same time. Then there was a flash of black light, and her throat was also cut open at the same time. There were 3 different attacks, and they didn't seem to come one after the other. It was as if they were all happening at the same time, but there was only one enemy. Strictly speaking, Mickey didn't have a real physical body. She was born from nightmares and lived by devouring nightmares. She had many similarities with Eric. However, not to mention the terrible wounds on her left and right shoulders, the moment her throat was cut open, Mickey couldn't even make a sound. What was erased wasn't her ability to speak on the surface. It was even her ability to communicate with all the sounds in her origin. The girl in a kimono fell to her knees on the stairs in unprecedented horror. The black flames scattered by Miss Maid had been withdrawn. She glanced at Mickey expressionlessly. "You said too much that you shouldn't say. Please pay attention to it next time. If you do it again, I can only erase you from the origin." Miss Maid glanced forward again and said indifferently, "Mr. Arex, please take care of your people." The modesty was only because the other party was a guest of the club, a guest in the process of transaction. That was all. Sure. Erex's figure came from the void. As an invader who owned almost 1/3 of Yenwue's world, theoretically, there was no place in Yenwue's world that could stop his arrival. "I'm really sorry." Erex came to Mickey's side. "I spoiled this child. Sometimes she really does something out of line." But after that, Yu Yi just walked directly behind Luochio, because the so-called apology should be to her master, not her. She didn't need to steal the limelight of the host. "In this case, I won't heal this lady's injury." Luochio nodded. Although it was just a little effort, it would consume his lifespan after all. Even if his current lifespan could probably be wasted, Yu Yi would not be happy. "It's my pleasure." Erex glanced at Mickey. The seriously injured girl in a kimono showed a complicated and annoyed look at this time. "About this collision, it's indeed my fault." Erex gently shook his head towards Mickey. "In order to express my apology, after this transaction is completed, I will add 50 true souls to the original transaction fee as an apology." Luochio didn't refuse, smiling and saying, "Thank you very much." If the customer was satisfied and wanted to give more, there was no reason not to take it. Naturally, he would take it. Otherwise, he wouldn't give face to the club, right? The club was the most considerate of the customers. 2 days later, it's the appointed time to take action. Erex held Mickey up at this time, glancing at Luochio. "I look forward to our pleasant cooperation." Erex didn't show any angry expression until he left. At this time, the servant girl suddenly said, "Master, the former master once said that Erex is actually a very suitable successor. But I don't like him." "Don't like him?" She already knew how to express her feelings in this way. "I feel that we get along quite well. Although, he's quite dark." Luochio just smiled and didn't make any more comments. That was the former master's consideration, it had nothing to do with him. Because he was the current owner, even the former master couldn't take it back. The identity of the owner only belonged to the current owner. Unless Luochio took the initiative to give it up and transferred it through other means. With that said, Luochio turned around and looked at the end of the stone steps. At the end of the road leading to the shrine, a slightly thin figure stood quietly. It was the shrine's witch. She lowered her head and looked at him quietly. When Boss Luo turned around to look at her, Their eyes met unexpectedly. After that, the witch turned around and left without saying anything. She probably isn't looking at me. Boss Luo smiled slightly. The moment his palm flipped, a black card appeared and then disappeared. Yi then glanced at the unripe rice village at the foot of the mountain, but she shook her head. It's a pity. If this Nagato family is real, there are many suitable investors. I kind of want to open Erex's box. Luochu shook his head. Unfortunately, this is only a temporary collateral. Zhuifeng, let's send the gift to Zhuifeng since he didn't enter the village. Okay. The maid smiled elegantly. Today before entering the movie, Yanwua World was to send gifts to the guests for Christmas Eve. You can't use your power? This was Zixing's question after listening to Mo Xiaofei's account of what happened a year ago and all the information collected in this year. It didn't take much time to sort out these materials. Most of the time was actually used to soothe Mo Xiaofei's spirit, mania. In this year's reincarnation, Mo Xiaofei became inexplicably manic. But with the passage of time, Mo Xiaofei would gradually return to normal. Being trapped in such a nightmare reincarnation, he had not lost his mind so far. It was enough to show that the will of Dragon Lord's disciple was very strong. And it should be from the moment I fell into the trap of the Nagato family. Mo Xiaofei recalled carefully. It should be from then on that my power began to weaken. It didn't disappear until I came into contact with the crazy woman in the dungeon. But I vaguely feel that my power is not erased but suppressed by something. From the first day of reincarnation, it was naturally not convenient for Mo Xiaofei, who had no power, to do whatever he wanted. After going through the first few reincarnations, Mo Xiaofei began to master some of the characteristics of his reincarnation. Once he came into contact with the crazy woman in the dungeon, reincarnation would start. Once he died, reincarnation would also start. If he did nothing and hid in the unripe rice village, reincarnation would also start within 7 days. If I didn't guess wrong, you and I should have come to this world at the same time. Zixing pondered at this time. Lord Mo has reincarnated here for a year. It seems that time has not moved forward, but in fact I have already arrived. So, time should be passing, but your time in the unripe rice village has become extremely slow. 1 day in heaven, 1 year on earth. Heaven on earth. But I am more worried about you. Mo Xiaofei shook his head. I'm afraid that even if you come, you will repeat the same cycle as me. At this time, he is still concerned about me being trapped in reincarnation. Zixing frowned slightly. Isn't this Dragon Lord's disciple too kind? This needs to be tried before you know. Zixing pondered for a while. Fortunately, Lord Mo's memory won't disappear. Although this is the source of the pain, it is not the key to breaking this situation. At the very least, you can continue to accumulate information about the unripe rice village. I'm afraid that if I fall into reincarnation like you, but I can't keep this part of my memory, it will be too troublesome. Because every time you have to convince me. Why don't you tell me something special as a secret signal? Mo Xiaofei thought for a moment and asked. Zhenlong. Zixing said coldly. Zhenlong. Mo Xiaofei was taken aback. It sounds like a name. Is it your name? Speaking of which, Zhuifeng doesn't seem to have officially told me what your name is. Zixing said calmly. Just treat it as a code name. If I lose my memory and you need to convince me, as long as you say this code name, I will believe you. I understand. Mo Xiaofei nodded. What about the so-called Zhou goddess? Zixing asked quickly. Mo Xiaofei shrugged and said, the goddess will lose her memory every time. In the beginning, I could still be patient and let her believe me again and again. In the end, I didn't bother to pay attention to her. At this time, she should start to panic about losing her power again, and then carefully inquire about my information. Anyway, she does the same thing every time. Mo Xiaofei shook his head and said, instead of wasting time convincing her from the beginning, It's better to find the key to breaking the situation directly. It's a pity that even so, there is no result so far. He didn't want to play with this girl, but he was helpless. It's already very difficult to get the information of all the people in this village. Zixing looked at Emo Xiaofei sympathetically. By the way, why did you come back this time? Fuji. Zixing said calmly, it's a Fuji. When I was watching the movie, I started to lose focus when I saw Fuji. I suspect that this time is related to this Fuji, so I came to the unripe rice village. In the movie, Fuji was written by the possessed heroine Narukami Kuna, so I think the key is probably on the heroine. But from the beginning to the end, Narukami Kuna has never appeared. Emo Xiaofei said seriously, in this year, you are the only person who entered the unripe rice village. If your guess is right, the reincarnation time of unripe rice village is actually flowing, but if it's so slow, I'm afraid we have to wait for decades or even hundreds of years to wait for Narukami Kuna to appear. If this is the case, then I'm afraid we will all completely go crazy. Zixing voiced the worry in Emo Xiaofei's heart, and she became extremely solemn. The reincarnation time is 100 years. This greedy wolf clan young master didn't know if he could hold on. After a moment of silence, Zixing suggested, anyway, I want to contact the crazy woman under the dungeon first to see what's going on. That mechanism is not easy to get in. Emo Xiaofei shook his head. Every time I want to go in, I will alarm the Nagato family. There were several times when I was killed directly and reincarnated directly. Leave it to me this time. Zixing said indifferently, now, the identity of Tsukihime Kondo is still useful. Emo Xiaofei nodded, but he thought that he finally met a companion. He didn't know where Zhuifeng and the class monitor were at this time. Under the cherry tree. Erex extracted a thick grayish-black mist from the void and injected it into Miyoshi's body. The wound on her shoulder, as well as the even more terrifying wound on her throat, began to slowly heal. Miss Yu Ye's black flame is a terrifying thing that can directly calcine the soul. Even in the main world, there are not many things that can resist it. Moreover, it can only resist it. Erex shook his head. You have to be more patient. The nightmare extracted from unripe rice village will help you recover as soon as possible. Recalling the moment when she couldn't resist at all in front of that woman, Miyoshi's face turned pale. Miyoshi spoke with difficulty. I'm sorry, Erex-sama. Miyoshi is incompetent. Erex shook his head and said, I know your character. It's my fault for not considering this. Forget it. It's over anyway. The most important thing now is for you to recover. But because of Miyoshi, sir, you lost another 50 true souls. Miyoshi lowered her head deeply. Erex smiled slightly and said, even if I exchange all my true souls, I can't bear to part with you. Erex-sama. Chapter 700. Half-demons, as the name suggested, were only half-demons. And because the body had the relationship of a human, it was closer to the appearance of a human from the moment it was born. That's why it didn't? Most half-demons could be described as ugly. There were even some who looked neither human nor demon. They walked around with a horrifying appearance, causing humans to be afraid of them. Pure demons did not intend to accept them. After all, most half-demons were born because they could not control their lower bodies. It was almost impossible to take responsibility for a monster that had sex with a human for the sole purpose of venting and accidentally left behind a descendant. Ouch! Ouch! Damn woman, can't you go easy on me? The red-robed half-demon stared at the witch who was a head shorter than him with dissatisfaction. The half-demon youth muttered in his heart, too small, there's not much meat to eat. Although it's very tender, it doesn't have much bite. Why is it so thin? It probably won't taste good. Although, the half-demon youth had never eaten a transvestite before. If you didn't help me fight off that toad, I wouldn't even want to treat you. She was a head shorter than the half-demon youth. She looked like she was only a little over 10 years old. Although the childish look on her face did not fade away, she spoke like an old woman. This made the half-demon youth gnash his teeth in anger. But there was no other way. He could not beat her. She was only 10.5 years old. What the hell? As a half-demon, he had seen the winter snow 16 times. After the spring and cherry blossom season next year, he would welcome the 17th winter snow, right? That toad will come again. The half-demon youth obviously did not want to dwell too much on the little witch's wound bandaging technique. He changed the topic to another matter. There was a mysterious power hidden in the ancient shrine in front of him. This power could completely awaken the half-demon's demon blood. When the demon blood was completely awakened, the half-demon youth could be called a demon youth. This was his dream since he was born. The toad seemed to have the same plan, so it came to attack. Should he take advantage of the time when Little Witch is fighting with that stinky toad to steal the mysterious energy from the shrine? The half-demon youth looked at Little Witch, who was pounding the herbs, and a trace of evil thoughts gradually grew in his mind. How could this be considered evil? He was a monster, even if he was only a half-monster. Have you always lived in this place? The half-demon boy couldn't help but ask with a frown. She was too young. Wouldn't it be too spacious for her to live alone in such a shrine? Where are your relatives? You have too many questions. Little Witch raised her head and pressed the crushed herbs onto the last wound on the half-demon youth's arm. Then, she rolled it up a few times with a white cloth in disgust. You can leave now. Don't come back again. Otherwise, I will kill you. But it wasn't scary at all. As expected, it was still because she was too young, even if she tried so hard to pretend to be cold. However, even though it was small, the spiritual energy that it emanated was simply too powerful. The half-monster youth had no choice but to back off a little. I will come again. I will definitely obtain the power here and become a real monster. Just wait and see. The half-monster youth fled from the shrine in a panic. Spring passed and autumn came. It was the 17th winter. The half-monster youth once again came to the shrine halfway up the mountain. Little Witch had grown a little taller, but she was still as skinny as before. The half-monster youth, who felt that he had become much stronger, hid outside the shrine and peeped. Little Witch was kneeling in the shrine, writing and reading. She seemed to be so focused that she didn't notice his arrival. This was a good opportunity. The half-monster youth's face was filled with excitement. He knew that the center of the shrine's main hall was enshrined with that mysterious power. Taking advantage of Little Witch's absence, the half-monster youth easily arrived in front of the altar. However, the half-monster youth didn't seem to think of one thing. How could Little Witch, who had such powerful spiritual energy, be so careless with the thing she was guarding? There were many hidden runes set up in front of the divine altar. When Little Witch put down the book in her hand and arrived at the shrine's main hall, the half-monster youth had already fallen into a trap and couldn't move. It's you again. Little Witch frowned. I told you, if you dare to come again, I'll kill you. The half-monster youth struggled madly, revealing his ferocious fangs. If Little Witch said she would kill him, then she would really kill him. This was because he heard that the toad had been killed. Although it was said that toads were long-lived, they would still die in the end. However, the half-monster youth still couldn't break free from the trap set by Little Witch. The moment Little Witch knocked the arrow on the longbow, the half-monster youth suddenly gave up struggling. Perhaps death was another kind of release. Do you want to die? Little Witch's fingers slowed down, but she didn't release the bowstring. Why are you talking so much nonsense? Damn woman, if you want to kill me, just kill me! The half-monster youth instantly roared. Little Witch asked curiously, why do you want the thing enshrined in the shrine? The half-monster youth said that he wanted to become a real monster. Little Witch untied the bindings and told him to leave and never come again. I'll come again. The half-monster youth ran away. In the end, he let out an indignant voice at the foot of the mountain. I'll defeat you with my own hands. I'll make you give the thing to me willingly. Don't come again, little witch said silently on the mountain. Spring left and autumn came again. The half-monster youth's 18th year, Li Dong. A scar appeared on the half-monster youth's face. After a year of training, he felt that he had become much stronger. Little witch was still in the shrine, writing and reading. It was cold and cheerless. Damn woman, this time I'll definitely. This time, the half-monster youth was directly thrown down from the shrine. To be precise, he rolled down the long stone stairs. However, he still didn't want to give up. Then, he would go out and train for another month. Damn woman, this time I'm different from before. Rolled down. Damn woman, this time I'll definitely. Rolled down. Damn woman. Rolled down. Every time, it seemed to be tougher than a rock. Rolled down. Please, lend me the power of the shrine, as long as I can become a real monster. No matter what you want me to do, I'll agree to it. Finally, the half-monster youth lowered his head in front of the shrine. The horns on his body seemed to have been worn down by the rolling down the stairs. He really couldn't beat the shrine's guardian witch. Why are you so determined to become a real monster? Little witch asked after thinking for a while. That guy. The half-monster youth gritted his teeth and said, That guy, no matter what, I'll defeat him and make him admit his mistake in front of my mother. For this purpose, I can give up anything. Mother. Little witch furrowed her brows. Your demonic blood came from father? The half-monster youth tilted his head. He's called Divine General Dog. My mother was taken away by him. After giving birth to me, he abandoned us. It's because my mother was just a tool for fun. It's because I can't inherit the blood of a real monster. I'm just a half-monster. I can't even see the light. I even made that guy a joke for other monsters. Little witch pondered for a long time and finally shook her head. You have too much blood on you. If you become a real monster, it'll only bring more death. I've only killed bandits and monsters that only know how to rob. The half-monster youth stared at Little Witch in front of him. I've never eaten a human. All right then, Little Witch said calmly. Go and kill 100 big monsters that do evil, and collect 100 different ancient books and bring them to me. I can promise to help you become a real monster. She gave him a mission that was almost impossible to complete. 100 big monsters could be determined from the remaining monster energy, but 100 different ancient books. It was up to her whether it counted or not. 100 big monsters, 100 different ancient books. The half-monster youth gritted his teeth and turned to leave. It's a deal. Another month later, the half-monster youth sat in front of the shrine proudly, placing the relics of the 3 big monsters and more than 10 ancient books on the ground. I'll keep my word. I did it. There are still 97 big monsters and 86 ancient books. Little Witch glanced at the half-monster youth's trophies indifferently. What? There should be 85 books left. 2 of them are duplicates. Little Witch shook her head. Can't you read? The half-monster youth gritted his teeth and finally left. I'll come back in a month. Little Witch still shook her head and looked at the things scattered on the ground. She silently picked up the things left by the big monsters and purified them. Then, she picked up the ancient books and returned to her room. It was like a library with the smell of paper and ink. Her body seemed to be stained with this smell. Little Witch began to read the ancient books that she had never read. Suddenly, she lowered her head and smiled. Her knowledge and experience of the outside world all came from the books here. The world of books was as vast as the ocean. What kind of wonderful world would he bring next time? Little Witch quietly wrote the half-monster youth's name on the white paper. It was a beautiful handwriting. Inuyasha Zhuifeng rubbed his head. He accidentally fell from the branch after turning sideways. Zhuifeng couldn't figure out why he chose to sleep on the branch. Maybe it was the hobby of this body? However, it seemed that he had a dream as a bystander. Maybe it was the remnant of a little memory of the original owner of this body? What is this? Zhuefeng stared at something on the ground in confusion. Just in front of the place where he fell from the tree there was a small box. Zhuefeng was familiar with such a box tied with a ribbon. But when did it appear? Even if he fell asleep, no one should have come here. At least he, who had a keen sense of smell, couldn't smell anything strange at this time. Zhuefeng frowned, so he picked up the box directly. After shaking it a few times, he felt that it seemed to be empty. There was nothing inside. He couldn't help but feel even more strange. In the end, he couldn't hold himself back and tore open the box. However, he didn't get anything from it. There was only a strange, illusory mass of air in front of him, or rather, it was more like a translucent white ball of light. What the hell? Zhuefeng scratched his head and stretched out his hand to flatten this ball of air. He felt like he couldn't stop. However, when he threw this strange ball of light on the ground, this thing automatically flew back to him. Even when he threw the ball of light far away, this thing still came back to him immediately. It seemed that it was going to stick to him like this. This thing. Zhuefeng frowned and finally grabbed this ball of light in the palm of his hand. There was a strange but indescribable feeling. Forget it. I don't care. Let's go find Purple Star. Zhuefeng jumped directly on the top of a big tree and looked around. What surprised him was that he had already seen the stone tablet of Unripe Rice Village, but he didn't see a place similar to a village nearby. The Nagato family was a wealthy family in a small place with strict family rules. Of course, such a wealthy family might be the size of a sesame seed among all the fiefs of the Kondo family. The direct descendants of the Nagato family were already sitting upright, preparing for lunch for the day. Shinji Nagato and Saburo Nagato sat facing each other. In the seat above, the empty seat was exclusive to Master Nagato. Next to him was Master Nagato's wife. At this time, Master Nagato's wife was already there. Below, starting from Shinji Nagato and Saburo Nagato, there were the members of the Nagato family. There was Master Nagato's sister, Nagato Kiko, as well as the son-in-law, Sakamoto Ryota, Nagato Kiko's son, Sakamoto Taichi, and his daughter-in-law. On the opposite side was the youngest, Chizuko Nagato. The family was silent. Even if there was food in front of them, and the food was probably cold, they didn't move because Master Nagato had not arrived yet. Eating before the family master was an act of contempt for the family master's authority. The mistress of the Nagato family was already old. At this time, she lowered her eyebrows and waited quietly. When she heard footsteps coming from outside the door, she quickly stood up, opened the door for her husband, Master Nagato, and waited for him to sit down. When Master Nagato sat down, he glanced at everyone present. Finally, he saw Chizuko Nagato at the end with a bandage on her forehead. He frowned and said, "What's the matter?" It seems that when Chizuko was playing in the courtyard, she accidentally fell and knocked her head. Master Nagato's wife whispered at this time, "I remember that Shio took care of her." Master Nagato said calmly, "Go back and punish her." Chapter 701. Died of illness? Zixing and Emo Xiaofei were still discussing the details of entering the Nagato family's underground prison. Naturally, they inevitably discussed the true identity of the crazy woman trapped in the dungeon. It is claimed to be so, but it is not the case. Emo Xiaofei frowned as if recalling those chaotic memories. But as for the reason, no matter how I probed this year, there is no way to find out. But there is only one thing that can be confirmed. That is, only Master Nagato, Shinji Nagato, and Saburo Nagato know that this crazy woman is hidden in the Nagato family's dungeon. Zixing asked curiously, "How can Master Mo be so sure?" Emo Xiaofei said with a wry smile, "In this year's reincarnation, I have directly asked everyone in the Nagato family, including the lowest servants." Anyway, he had been loading the file all the time. After countless times of seeking death, Emo Xiaofei believed that he had grasped a lot of information. It was just that he still could not break the current deadlock. Let's not talk about Master Nagato and Shinji Nagato for the time being. Zixing frowned. Saburo Nagato can actually tolerate his wife being locked in the dungeon without seeing the sun? Emo Xiaofei said, there is one thing that is strange. It's about Tsuruko Nagato. Pen's spirit? Zixing raised her eyebrows, the one in the movie. I'm afraid that the world we are in now has seriously deviated from the plot of the movie. Emo Xiaofei shook his head. So if we keep using the plot as a reference, I'm afraid it's just a dead end in front of us. Then, what do you mean about Tsuruko Nagato? Tsuruko Nagato was born in November. Emo Xiaofei said seriously, but as far as I know, Saburo Nagato went to the battlefield around the new year of the same year. You want to say that Tsuruko Nagato is not Saburo Nagato's biological child? Zixing shook her head. There is not much difference in the world. If Saburo Nagato has slept with his wife before going to war, it is not impossible. Or, since he is going to war, it is more reasonable to be intimate with his wife before leaving. Although that is true, Emo Xiaofei nodded, there is a servant who is responsible for keeping watch at night. I used to tie him up quietly and beat him. After Saburo Nagato left, Master Nagato once quietly came to the place where Saburo Nagato lived late at night. Moreover, according to my observation, Saburo Nagato is not good to Chizuko Nagato. He even hates her. Emo Xiaofei shook his head. How can a parent hate their own child? You should have seen Chizuko Nagato, right? This little girl is so pretty. I like her from the bottom of my heart. Unfortunately, I couldn't get close to Saburo Nagato at all. Although he was often drunk, I tried to ask him when he was drunk, but unfortunately, I couldn't get anything out of him. Originally, if I hadn't met you this time, I would have caught Saburo Nagato. Emo Xiaofei didn't say what he would do after being caught. Zixing was smart enough not to ask further. If he hadn't gone mad after a year of reincarnation, or if he hadn't changed in the slightest, it would naturally be abnormal. Zixing could vaguely feel a trace of indifferent hostility from Emo Xiaofei, but she did not point it out immediately. She just said, then, what's the matter with the curse of the village? The village girl you mentioned, Take? This is what I want to talk about, the shameless shady business of the Nagato family behind the scenes. Emo Xiaofei took a deep breath, and a terrifying murderous intent flashed in his eyes. Shady business, Emo Xiaofei shook his head. I'm afraid it's hard to explain clearly. It's better to let you see it directly. You will have a more intuitive understanding. But first, you have to help me send Master Nagato away. Because the entrance to the mechanism is in the yard where he lives, even next to his bedroom. Master Nagato won't leave this place on weekdays. Even if he leaves, he will instruct the servants to watch and not allow anyone to approach. For many times, I took advantage of Master Nagato's absence to knock out the guards before sneaking into that place. Zixing nodded, then looked at the time and tied Emo Xiaofei with a rope again. It just looked like it was tied tightly on the outside, but it was just a rope. After the two discussed, the best time to sneak in was at night. When the daughter of the Kondo family arrived, the Nagato family naturally had to hold a grand reception for her. Master Nagato was already preparing a sumptuous dinner. Soon after, the samurai of the Kondo family, who were sent away by Zixing, returned after patrolling. They originally planned to interrogate Sasaki Kojiro, but they were summoned back by Miss Tsukihime. She told them to prepare and accompany her to attend the Nagato family's dinner. The interrogation was not urgent after the dinner. How could they not be anxious? How could the safety of Kondo Tsukihime be comparable to the dinner party in this small place? Under the powerful gaze of Kondo Tsukihime, the two samurai finally agreed. But this was also good. Accompanying the lady to attend the dinner party, one on the left and one on the right. With their powerful force, they could resist any danger. Although Master Nagato is also a samurai, he is now old. How can he be their opponent? Zixing didn't care about the thoughts of the Kondo samurai. She waved her hand and called a maidservant in front of her. Take the veil and put on my clothes. Tonight you will attend on my behalf. Zixing said calmly, remember not to speak. Just nod or shake your head. Miss, I dare not. How dare she pretend to be Tsukihime? I'm afraid this is a capital offense. You just have to do as I tell you. Zixing said in a deep voice, otherwise you will be removed from the Kondo family. Then okay. Seeing the maid shivering and trying on the clothes, Zixing sighed secretly. If it weren't for the loss of demon beast power, why would it be so troublesome? Sit up straight. Don't lower your head. You are now Kondo Tsukihime. Show your aura. Okay. There were far more people than when the Nagato family had dinner. Because, not only the Nagato family, but there were also some higher-ranking people in Unripe Rice Village. Of course, under the strict class system, Master Nagato had to give up the top position. His position was slightly moved to the bottom. Father, the servant said that Miss Tsukihime has left the room. Shinji Nagato whispered in Master Nagato's ear. Master Nagato nodded. Wait a moment. Remember to perform well. If you can become Miss Tsukihime's husband, then our Nagato family will never have to. In short, you are on your own. I understand, Father. Shinji Nagato nodded solemnly. Master Nagato suddenly said, there is one more thing. Tsuruko is your uncle's daughter and your sister. Even if there is anything, you shouldn't hurt her. Do you understand? The servant, Ashu, who took care of Miss Tsuruko inappropriately, was locked up and subjected to a lot of family discipline. He was afraid that she couldn't bear to tell the truth in the process of suffering. It was not difficult for Shinji Nagato to think of this. But, facing his father's reminder at this moment, Shinji Nagato clenched his fist. He took another deep breath and calmed down. I will pay attention next time, Father. Do you plan to have a next time? Master Nagato snorted coldly. Shinji Nagato panicked. No. At this time, the door opened. Kondo Tsukihime walked in slowly accompanied by two Kondo family samurai. Master Nagato quickly stood up. As soon as he got up, everyone present stood up one after another. Miss Tsukihime, what's wrong with you? Miss Tsukihime is not feeling well. The samurai on the left said calmly. So, you can only cover it with a veil. Nagato, even if Miss Tsukihime is ill, she still attends your banquet. This is your honor. Do you understand? Master Nagato was immediately grateful. As for Shinji Nagato, he also began to look for opportunities to leave a deep impression on the princess of the Kondo family. At the banquet, Kondo Tsukihime sat upright and did not say a word. Little cold hands. The wooden door creaked. This was the place where the Nagato family closed the disobedient servant. It was also the place where the firewood was piled. The maidservant, Ashu, was locked up here at this moment. She was not tied up, but there were many bruises on her arms. However, there were no traces of injury on her face. The door was not locked. There was no one guarding outside. However, Ashu did not dare to leave. If she left here without the master's instructions, she would end up even more miserable. The moment the door opened, Ashu quickly knelt on the ground, lowered her head, and said in horror, Ashu won't dare next time. I will take good care of Miss Tsuruko, and not let her get hurt. Ashu really won't dare. Master, please forgive me. Ashu, what are you doing? It was Tsuruko Nagato's voice. Miss Tsuruko. Ashu raised her head in amazement. She saw Tsuruko Nagato carrying a lantern that was particularly large for her, and holding a leaf of rice ball in her hand. She came to Ashu. Ashu, are you hungry? Miss Tsuruko, go away. Don't stay here. Otherwise, the master will scold you if he sees you. Ashu quickly looked outside the door. Seeing that there was no one outside, she relaxed a little. They are all eating. They won't come here. Tsuruko Nagato shook her head and opened the leaf slowly. Ashu, eat. I got it from the kitchen. Is the master inviting the princess of the Kondo family? Ashu nodded. But, Miss Tsuruko, they don't let you attend. Tsuruko Nagato touched her bandaged forehead. They don't let me. They said it doesn't look good. Ashu took care of Tsuruko Nagato lovingly and carefully touched Tsuruko Nagato's forehead. Does it still hurt? Tsuruko Nagato shook her head and once again held the rice ball in front of Ashu. Ashu was moved and sad, but she took it. Tsuruko Nagato took out a book from her small kimono at this time and smiled. Ashu, read to me after you are full. Okay, Ashu will read to the miss. Emo Xiaofei, who was waiting quietly, suddenly heard the sound of something breaking outside the door. He immediately loosened the rope and opened the door to take a look. At first glance, he found that an Ashigaru who was guarding outside had fallen to the ground at this time, and the ground was full of fragments of flower pots. Emo Xiaofei looked at the girl standing next to him and couldn't help but be stunned. You don't have to be so ruthless, right? He's your subordinate after all. He is Kondo Tsukiheim's subordinate, not mine. Zixing said calmly. Let's not delay. Let's go immediately. The banquet should not take long. Emo Xiaofei nodded and said quickly, Follow me. He led Zixing directly to the courtyard where Master Nagato lived and swaggered in. At this time, an angry voice came from inside. Stop! Who is it? Big brother, can you change the lines next time? Emo Xiaofei complained and then rushed up directly. In the next second, he heard a dull sound. The guard had fallen to the ground. Emo Xiaofei clapped his hands and then waved to the place where Zixing was hiding. You can come out now. As expected of Lord Emo, Zixing nodded. Emo Xiaofei shook his head and said, I have killed this guy dozens of times. I know where his weakness is. Although I can't use my original strength now, this Sasaki Kojiro's body is still very strong. Zixing didn't say anything and followed Emo Xiaofei into the room in the courtyard. Be careful. The first time I fell through the mechanism activated by Master Nagato. This place. The starting rope is hidden under the screen. Emo Xiaofei pointed to a tatami somewhere. Do you want to go down from here? Emo Xiaofei shook his head and said, I can't go down from here. There is a stone door below. I can't open it now. But there are actually other entrances. It's where Master Nagato sleeps. I found it later. Come with me. Emo Xiaofei quickly touched Master Nagato's bedroom, then twisted a vase placed in the corner, and the opposite wall loosened a little. Emo Xiaofei stepped forward and pushed the wall hard. The wall was pushed open. Zixing glanced at it, picked up an oil lamp, and lit it. She followed behind Emo Xiaofei. Behind the wall was a staircase that led downward. What did the Nagato family build this underground prison for? Zixing couldn't help but ask curiously. This dungeon doesn't seem to be built by the Nagato family. Emo Xiaofei said slowly, Unripe Rice Village was occupied by a demon a long time ago. The demon built a dungeon here to lock up the captured people and use them as his food. Later, the demon was captured. Later, the ancestors of the Nagato family made contributions and were rewarded with Unripe Rice Village as their territory. I think this dungeon was discovered when the Nagato family's mansion was built. Then, the Nagato family transformed it into what it is now. Zixing nodded. Emo Xiaofei suddenly said at this time, Speaking of which, the women born in Unripe Rice Village are very beautiful. Even if they are a little older, they can be described as charming, right? Lord Emo, I don't know what you want to say. Zixing didn't understand the meaning of Emo Xiaofei's words at this time. He didn't seem like a playboy who would keep silent about women. Have you seen the old people on the way here? Emo Xiaofei suddenly asked again. Not the old man, but the old woman. Zixing frowned, but she recalled what she saw on the way. No, why? On the one hand, it's because in ancient times the medical technology is not better. People have shorter lives. Emo Xiaofei said indifferently. On the other hand, it's man-made. Do you remember the curse I told you about? Zixing nodded. Emo Xiaofei's face turned gloomy. We can keep the young and beautiful ones, but we can only abandon the old ones. But since it's all the women in the village who are cursing, not everyone is willing to help those old people. The cell over there. Speaking of this, Emo Xiaofei's face turned even uglier. The crazy woman I told you about is locked up at the end. But the other cells are used to lock up those old women. Do you know why they are locked up? It's to cover up the fact that the curse doesn't exist. In addition, they are also fodder to feed something raised by the Nagato family. Zixing frowned, but she looked at the passage on the other side, still analyzing Emo Xiaofei's words. And this side is the real source of the Nagato family's income. Emo Xiaofei gritted his teeth. A den of lust. Because of the curse, the young girls in Unripe Rice Village have to accept the fact that they must have intercourse with men to save their lives. When the women in the village have become accustomed to having intercourse with different men, they no longer have scruples in this regard. But in fact, Unripe Rice Village still needs a final fig leaf. So, there is this place with an ironic name, Longevity Underground Palace. Emo Xiaofei led Zixing to the passage here and sneered. The Nagato family told the women in the village that in order to protect the village, they are willing to spend their family's wealth. Every month, they will hire some men from outside the village to prolong the lives of the women in the village, so that the women in the village will be grateful. But in fact, those men who come are paid. Ah! Zixing exclaimed in a low voice. It was not because of what Emo Xiaofei said, but because Emo Xiaofei quietly opened a door at this time and let her see everything behind the door. It could be described as magnificent. Chapter 702. The lights were brightly lit, but the room was full of unsightly scenes. The men's wanton laughter and the women's obedience. Perhaps the word obedience could not be used to describe the appearance of the women at this moment. They were either lying on the ground like the most docile dogs. The men even held the ropes tied to the women in their hand. The licentious laughter and the moans of bliss intertwined with the whispers of desire. Zixing finally withdrew her gaze from the shock. The men and women in the room were immersed in the vortex of desire at this moment. They did not notice that everything here had been seen by the intruders. Zixing slowly exhaled a turbid breath at this time, frowning. The women inside are a bit abnormal. Their eyes are a bit dull. Are they being controlled? Emo Xiaofei nodded. You can see it at first glance. He then smiled bitterly. In fact, when I first saw it, I couldn't even describe my feelings. It's too unsightly. For Emo Xiaofei, who had never held a girl's hand, the shock in his heart was no less than the shock of thunder. Even if he had seen the same scene many times, Emo Xiaofei still couldn't completely ignore it. He shook his head and waved away some messy thoughts in his mind. The Nagato family has a kind of secret medicine. After taking it, people will be in a trance. Well, we also have things like ecstasy in our society. The effect of this secret medicine may be similar. These women in the village won't remember too many things afterwards. They will only vaguely remember that they had intercourse with men before. However, they had no choice but to give in to men in order to survive, so they won't care too much about it. But I still don't understand. Zixing also shook her head and said, I came all the way from the main city of the Kondo family. I have also passed by prosperous places. There are also places for men to have fun in those places. It stands to reason that men outside don't have to come to such a remote place from afar. Emo Xiaofei said, This will return to the question I asked you at the beginning. Do you think that the women in this village are more beautiful? Emo Xiaofei sighed. It is said that there is a strange well in the early rice village. As long as a woman drinks the well water, she will gain unimaginable beauty. The daughter of the woman will also inherit such beauty. Didn't I say that this place was originally built by a monster? For a long time, the villagers of Unripe Rice Village had kept the secret of the well. They were afraid that outsiders would covet it and bring disaster to the village. However, for some unknown reason, This secret was eventually discovered by that monster. That demon also came for this magical well. Back then, it massacred many villagers. Later, the ancestors of the Kondo family brought people to ask for it. That was probably what happened back then, but there was no way to verify the specifics. From what I've heard, the mysterious well was destroyed in the battle with the demons. But because some of the women in the village have already drunk the water from the well, the beautiful physique has also been passed down. After so many years, although it is impossible to restore the situation where every woman is extremely beautiful, at least the girls born in this village are considered good-looking outside. There will even be stunning beauties. I heard that Saburo Nagato's wife was the most beautiful in unripe rice village. Zixing shook her head. Even if it is a beauty, there are many in the outside world. Is there anything special? I'm talking about these women who can attract men from the outside world. Emo Xiaofei said in a flirtatious tone, "It is said that the women in this village are a little different." Emo Xiaofei's tone was even more flirtatious. He squinted his eyes. I also caught one of the men and asked. He said that when the women in unripe rice village use. Oh no, I mean when doing that kind of thing, it will bring a particularly refreshing feeling. It can make people feel very comfortable. After trying it, they can't stop. Just because of this? Zixing frowned. Emo Xiaofei finally said, there is also a rumor that if you can often have sex with these women, the man may recover his energy and youth. Isn't this place called the Longevity Underground Palace? That's probably the reason. Longevity through sex? Zixing looked solemn and then disdainful. She shook her head again. Is there really such a thing? Impossible. Even the existing Zen of Joy lineage can't do it. At most, they can use Yin to supplement Yang. However, it is also an unorthodox method that harms others to benefit oneself. Sooner or later, it will be punished by heaven. What the hell is Zen of Joy? Aren't you taking it too seriously? This is clearly a gimmick made by the Nagato family. Emo Xiaofei did not want to discuss this sensitive topic with a girl too much, especially in such an environment. He shook his head and said, in short, because of the existence of this underground palace, the Nagato family actually made a lot of money secretly. That's right. This Nagato family has started to make this underground palace since they landed in unripe rice village? No, it should have started in the current Master Nagato's generation. The curse of the village began only 7 or 8 years ago. Zixing muttered, by the way, Lord Emo, you just said that there are other things in captivity here. She would not ignore Emo Xiaofei's initial statement about feed, the cell on the other side of the passage. I don't know what that is. Emo Xiaofei said with a hint of fear at this time. Every time I get close to it, I will lose consciousness. No matter how many times I try, I will only feel extreme pain. My body seems to be torn apart by something. I think I should be dead. If he died, he would reincarnate to the beginning again. With an inexplicable fear in his eyes, Emo Xiaofei looked at Zixing and asked, do you want to take a look? No, I'm more interested in seeing the crazy woman that Lord Emo spoke of. Zixing looked at Emo Xiaofei and said, according to the 3 conditions to trigger the reset mentioned by Lord Emo, it is obvious that this woman is the key. Moreover, if Lord Emo can't resist that strange place and loses consciousness, I'm afraid I won't be much better. Instead of this, it's better to choose a safer way to meet this crazy woman who is locked up. It would reset after a certain period of time and after death. However, when encountering the crazy woman in the dungeon, the time would also reset. A year had passed. This was also Emo Xiaofei's direction of thinking, so he sneaked in here many times. Then, let's not delay. Let's not delay. Zixing followed Emo Xiaofei's pace again and asked, tell me more about this crazy woman. In addition to being Saburo Nagato's wife, do you have more information about her? Emo Xiaofei said with a strange expression, speaking of which, this woman is called Narukami Haru. Narukami? Zixing was taken aback. The heroine in the movie seems to be called Narukami Kuna? Is there any special connection between the two? With this thought in mind, Zixing continued to listen to the information Mo Xiaofei inquired. Speaking of which, Narukami Haru was not born in unripe rice village. She was adopted by the previous generations, witch of the shrine on the mountain. I heard that she was originally going to inherit the shrine and become the new witch. But later, she fell in love with Saburo Nagato and gave up the qualification to inherit the shrine. Zixing nodded and asked abruptly, Lord Mo, have you been to the shrine? Mo Xiaofei nodded, yes, I have been there. At first, I heard from Bamboo that the previous generations which also died under the curse, but now it seems that the death of this which is probably related to the Nagato family. As for the new witch that Bamboo mentioned, I haven't seen it. Mo Xiaofei shook his head. I used 2 resets and waited at the shrine until the time was up. I didn't see anyone until the time was up. That place seems to have been uninhabited for a long time. In short, it gave me a very strange feeling. Lord Mo, there are many doubts in this unripe rice village. It is not normal for you and me to be dragged into this world. Zixing said solemnly. Moreover, meeting you makes me more sure that I am not the only one in the movie theater at that time. You mean everyone present is in this world of Yanwue? Zixing added. Is this movie only played in one movie theater? This is not a blockbuster. Mo Xiaofei bit his finger and said, generally, thriller movies don't have many showtimes. But, if you look at it from a national perspective, I'm afraid there are many showtimes. The key is that it's not just a movie. Now that I think about it, the movie Pen Spirit has been in theaters for almost 3 weeks. Wait, if the movie itself can pull people into this strange world, then how could those who finished watching it walk out of the theater unscathed? This is what I don't understand. Maybe I'm thinking in the wrong direction. Zixing shook her head and then stopped in an instant because she had heard some strange sounds. She looked at Mo Xiaofei and saw Mo Xiaofei nodding. It's right in front of us. That crazy woman. Later, you remember to relax your steps as much as possible. After trying so many times, I found that as long as I don't let this crazy woman find out, the reset will not happen. So, the condition to get the reset from the crazy woman should be to be discovered by her. The two quietly poked their heads out from the corner and looked at the crazy woman who was locked up not far away. This crazy woman sat directly on the ground at this time, motionless. She didn't seem to realize that she was being observed. Mo Xiaofei retracted his gaze at this time, took a step back, and shook his head helplessly. That's it. This woman will stay motionless like this for a whole day. What does she eat? I once met Master Nagato, and he personally brought some food over. He just threw it in casually and then left without looking at it. Mo Xiaofei whispered, usually she seems to be a servant in this underground palace. This servant can't hear or see. He only knows how to do things. I don't know how he trained him, but I'm afraid they don't come often. So sometimes she even swallows some reptiles, mice, and the like. No matter what, we have to give it a try. Purple Star took a deep breath. Lord Mo, do I remember the name I mentioned to you? Mo Xiaofei was taken aback, then nodded and said, Yes, Zhenlong. Is this your name? Speaking of it, I don't seem to know your name yet. He pretended to be relaxed just to ease the atmosphere at this time. Because he didn't know what would happen if there was one more person this time. Although it was the first time the goddess came with him. But after all, the goddess was originally from the Yanwue world. Naturally, she was different from the girl Zhuefeng liked. My name is Zixing. She glanced at Mo Xiaofei, Zhenlong. Lord Mo can just treat it as a secret code. Oh, okay. Mo Xiaofei nodded, then his heart moved. Zixing, where did I hear this name? It's so familiar. He couldn't remember it at once. The nightmare of reincarnation for a year made him a little vague about some things in the past. Zixing? Zixing? Wait, isn't this the young master of the greedy clan that teacher asked me to find? Is it just the same name? Just when Mo Xiaofei was about to ask, Zixing had already walked out and approached the crazy woman. At this time, Mo Xiaofei didn't have time to think about anything else and quickly followed up. The crazy woman in the cell didn't seem to hear the approaching footstep. She just sat on the ground silently. Zixing and Mo Xiaofei glanced at each other, then looked directly at this crazy woman, Narukami Haru. Narukami Haru moved at this time. Zixing continued, Narukami Haru, right? Narukami Haru moved again at this time, but she still didn't raise her head. Obviously, she had reacted to Zixing's voice. At this time, Zixing approached the fence again, squatted down, and whispered, Mom, I'm Tsuruko. Tsuruko, my daughter? Narukami Haru, whose hair was disheveled, slowly raised his head at this time. His eyes that seemed to be about to split opened even wider at this time, staring at Zixing outside the fence in a daze. Every time Narukami Haru found him, he would feel dizzy and reset to daytime in an instant. But this time, this feeling of dizziness didn't appear this time. Mo Xiaofei looked at Narukami Haru's appearance at this time in disbelief. Although she was still a little crazy, she was obviously not crazy. She even kept repeating the name Tsuruko as if she was recalling something. Mother, it's me, Tsuruko. Zixing continued softly, Tsuruko finally found you. Mother, I missed you so much. Her voice and expression changed. Chapter 703. Hidden within the mountain was a magnificent palace. A powerful monster called Jiu Tun lived here. The name of Shutendaji caused all the people in the nearby towns to be terrified. Not only because of Shutendaji's strength, but also because of Shutendaji's ferocity. It was said that this Shutendaji loved to devour the flesh and blood of living people, especially the flesh and blood of young and pure women. Everyone in the vicinity was in a state of panic. However, many powerful samurai, monks, and even mysterious yin-yang masters came to ask for it. In the end, none of them returned, becoming food for Shutendaji and his subordinates. Everything within a 50-kilometer radius was shrouded in the shadow of this powerful monster, but that seemed to be the end of it. That was because the powerful demon Shutendaji that was feared by the commoners and even the samurai was currently showing a pained expression. Shutendaji liked to transform into a beautiful man to seduce young girls, but right now, this beautiful face of his was almost distorted. Shutendaji grabbed his own neck in pain as his body was lifted up high by something. It was the hand of a human warrior. Apart from the pain, Shutendaji's eyes were filled with disbelief. It did not believe that a human warrior could possess such power. However, when it accidentally saw the shadow of the human warrior on the wall that was elongated by the candlelight, it had a trace of understanding in its heart. On top of the wall, a huge shadow was wantonly swaying. It was a monster with 8 huge heads. Hakata. Shutendaji didn't remember to say this name that was taboo in Yen Wue's world, a name that even demons feared. At this moment, a large amount of blood splattered onto the wall, signifying that the evil Shutendaji's life had come to an end. The 8-headed monster on the wall danced even more crazily. When everything returned to normal, the human warrior casually sat on the ground, licked his lips, and a purple light flashed in his eyes. This Shutendaji isn't bad, at least he helped me recover some of my strength. Now that I think about it, the user of the clear sable sword didn't seem to care. Samurai. Hakata furrowed its brows and pondered over the course of the battle. At the beginning, when it had just emerged, its strength was at its lowest, and it had not even fully awakened its consciousness. It had only sensed the power of Zhang Lu's emperor's sword and thought back to the great disaster that had befallen the Shangliu clan in Kelowna, which was why it had fled in panic. However, now that he was awake, he felt that although the clear sable sword was not bad, it was not as powerful as when it had forced the Shangliu clan into a desperate situation. The Hakata serpent did not know why the clear sable sword had changed owners, nor why it had come to this remote fragment world that had nothing to do with Kelowna. But it probably had something to do with the hidden dangers of this fragment world, because it was once the owner of Yen Wuye's world's general authority. At that time, it entered this fragment world by chance and directly took half of Yen Wuye's world from Izanagi and Izanami of the Sky Jade Pillar. It became a huge disaster that could destroy the entire Yen Wuye's world. It was even called the Snake of Destruction. Despite this, Hakata Serpent and Izanagi and Izanami of Yahadano could not do anything to each other. If they continued to fight like this, the world fragment that could evolve into a world would eventually be obliterated. When both sides could not get any benefits, they had reached a tacit understanding of non-aggression. However, as of now, Hakata Serpent, who had broken the seal and came back again, had to admit that it was too conceited and arrogant at that time. Otherwise, it would not let Susanoo, one of the three noble sons, succeed and be sealed in the Totsuka sword. Damn it, even if Susanoo has the Totsuka sword, he can just crush him easily. If it weren't for Izanagi and Izanami secretly using the world's omnipotence to restrict me that day, how could I succeed? Every time it thought of the moment when it was sealed, Hakata Serpent felt indescribable regret, wasn't it? Originally, in Yen Wuye's world, it was a supreme being with half of the world's authority, living a carefree life. However, because of its greed, it was sealed for many years, and even its authority was taken away. However, this time, the world's authority has been divided again, as the autarch who once possessed half of the authority of this world, even if it was taken away, it was still extremely sensitive to such things. In fact, because half of the authority had been completely refined by it, even if it was taken away later on, there was still some sort of connection in the unseen world. It seems that Yen Wuye has ushered in an intruder like me after all. Hakata Serpent sat in the palace that originally belonged to Shutendaji. It lowered its eyebrows and sneered, "It's best that you two fight to the death so that I can enjoy the benefits." But first, what it had to do was to restore more power as soon as possible. The entrance to the country of darkness is nearby. Hakata Serpent pondered for a while. Tsukuyami is one of the three noble sons and was given a part of the authority. This part of the authority is obviously split from the part that was taken away from me. At this time, the aura at the entrance of the country of darkness was surging and expanding wildly. Such a big movement naturally couldn't be hidden from Hakata Serpent's senses. It narrowed its eyes. It seems that my opportunity has come again. Kelowna, I'll be back again. After I master the fragments of this world and evolve a world that belongs to me completely, there's nothing to be afraid of. According to legend, only after possessing a world that belonged to oneself could one transcend from a huge cage to call a crazy woman mom. Emo Xiaofei knew that he couldn't do such a thing. Or rather, he didn't even consider doing it. "Madam, how can your daughter be a man?" As a man with a red background, Emo Xiaofei, who never had the hobby of dressing up as a pink joystick, subconsciously didn't think of such an operation. However, it seemed that he didn't feel dizzy this time. Seeing that Narukami Haru seemed to be immersed in some kind of memory under Zixing's call, Emo Xiaofei's heartbeat accelerated subconsciously. After a day and a year of reincarnation, there was finally some progress. "Tsuruko, my daughter." Narukami Haru raised her head abruptly, grabbing the fence with both hands. Her entire face seemed to be squeezing out of the gap of the fence. She was so forceful. Although Emo Xiaofei had seen Narukami Haru's terrifying and ferocious face many times, he still felt palpitations at this time. It was the first time that Narukami Haru had such a reaction. "You're not my daughter. You're a monster. You're a monster. Go faster. Monster. Go faster. Don't come close to me. Don't come close to me." Narukami Haru suddenly showed a horrified expression at this time. She shivered, squatted on the ground, and hugged her head with both hands. "Go away. Go away." Zixing subconsciously looked up at Emo Xiaofei, only to see him shaking his head in doubt. She frowned and continued to look at Narukami Haru, calling softly, "Mother, what's wrong with me? Am I a monster? I'm your daughter, Tsuruko. Tsuruko Nagato. Mother, don't you recognize me?" Nagato. Monster. Nagato. Narukami Haru's reaction at this moment was even more intense. She screamed suddenly, "Please! Please, don't let me give birth to this monster. Don't. I'll do anything. Don't. Don't. Ah." After letting out a twisted cry, Narukami Haru actually tried to ram himself into the wall crazily. Separated by the fence, Mo Xiaofei and Zixing, who had lost their strength, obviously couldn't stop all this. However, Narukami Haru's body was suddenly pulled by something, and she didn't really crash into the wall. It turned out that her ankles were tied with an iron chain. Under the cover of the kimono, Mo Xiaofei didn't notice this many times. Narukami Haru frantically stretched out her hands, trying to grab the stone wall. Her fingers directly broke the wall when she grabbed it, and a line of blood flowed on the wall, but it didn't seem painful. With another scream, Narukami Haru suddenly fell to the ground, motionless, but her chest was still moving slightly. She must have fainted due to excessive stimulation. I have never encountered such a situation. Mo Xiaofei took a deep breath. For the first time, I heard her say so much, and she even wanted to commit suicide. Zixing nodded, then stood up. Anyway, at least Narukami Haru spoke. "Lord Mo, it seems that this idea is right. We have contacted her, and she is still fine now. In other words, your reincarnation may have been lifted." Mo Xiaofei quietly clenched his fist. Don't be fooled by Zixing's understatement. That was only because she had never experienced the pain of not having a single friend by her side for a day. But in any case, with such progress, Mo Xiaofei did have a kind of joy like falling from the sky. "Maybe what you said is true." He suddenly became enraptured. "In this case, we may successfully find a clue and even solve the mystery of Unripe Rice Village. By the way, Narukami Haru is unconscious. We should leave here temporarily. I'm afraid the banquet is about to end. Master Nagato will definitely come back here. If we don't reset, he will know that the guard was knocked out. I'm afraid he will become..." "Zixing, are you okay?" Zixing didn't look at him at this time. She just looked behind him without saying a word. Mo Xiaofei looked back subconsciously. At the end of the passageway, at the corner where they had come from, something suddenly flashed past. In the silence, that thing flashed by. It was too fast. It was like a ghost. Mo Xiaofei blinked his eyes, trying to see what it was, but there was no one in front of him. Plop! At this moment, Madame Purple Star fell directly beside him. Mo Xiaofei opened his mouth and looked back again. A face that was countless times more terrifying than Narukami Haru appeared directly in front of him. It was too close. It was as if it was in front of his nose. The eyes were completely dark, and he couldn't see any sclera. Was it smiling? A feeling of dizziness came. Mo Xiaofei was very familiar with this feeling. "Reset? No!" he roared. The pressure that had accumulated for a year and almost caused his sanity to collapse completely overwhelmed his nerves at this moment. He instinctively stretched out his hand unwillingly, wanting to grab this terrifying face. No, finally, he fell to the ground. Hope and despair alternated at this moment. It was as if he had fallen from heaven to the depths of hell. When he woke up again, there was a comfortable temperature around him. The sunlight was softly wrapping Mo Xiaofei's body. In front of him, a girl carrying a basket was walking on the path with her head down with a heavy heart. Mo Xiaofei grabbed his hair and knelt on the road weakly. Then, he punched fiercely. Punch after punch, it was as if he would never tire, even if he had already smashed his own fist until it was bleeding. He could only relieve the sense of powerlessness caused by resetting time in this way. What's wrong with you?" The girl came in front of him and looked at him in amazement. Mo Xiaofei slowly raised his head. His eyes were unfocused. he suddenly roared. Get lost! The girl was frightened and stepped back 2 steps. She even accidentally fell to the ground. But she quickly scrambled to her feet and fled in terror. Looking at the girl in front of him, looking at Bamboo leaving like this, Emo Xiaofei finally took a deep breath and murmured, Sorry? I didn't mean it. After a long time, Emo Xiaofei stood up dejectedly and looked at a certain place on the hillside. He found a carriage, escorted by more than a dozen Jitu, slowly driving over. It was Zixing. She really is. Emo Xiaofei gritted his teeth. I can't give up on myself. Seeing the appearance of Zixing, Emo Xiaofei once again rekindled a trace of faith. Under the cherry tree, looking at the kimono girl, Meiji, who was wrapped in a gray and black mist, Eric's mouth curved. The quality is really good. The alternation of hope and despair. The faith can be rekindled immediately after being broken again and again. Such a strong will is rare. It's so rare. If possible, I really want her to be my stable food supply. Finally, the trace of mist gradually dispersed from Meiji's body. Meiji slowly opened her eyes. Eric smiled. How do you feel? It's done. Meiji replied softly. Eric nodded and waved his hand again. More gray mist gushed out from all directions. Then eat more, my Meiji. Meiji closed her eyes again, letting the gray mist enter her body. But apparently she didn't enjoy it. Instead, she seemed to be enduring this great pain. Sir Eric, I can still accommodate more. Please give me more, really, a perfect vessel. Eric showed a devilish smile again, but when he saw the scar on Meiji's throat, the smile quickly disappeared. This was the scar left by the servant girl of the club. Chapter 704. When the sun was about to set, in front of the shrine on the mountain, a young witch in a white and red dress was holding a broom and sweeping the surroundings. Her face seemed to be deprived of emotions. In the afterglow of the setting sun, it seemed to be eternally calm. After a simple cleaning, the young witch began to burn the fallen leaves that had been swept together. The sky began to darken, and when the fire began to rise, it seemed to neutralize the darkness. The young witch sat in front of the fire with her knees in her arms. Everything was silent. In this way she could stay like this forever, right? Such thoughts emerged in the young witch's mind. She began to open an ancient book. During the day, the half-demon who wasn't very strong but clamored to become the most powerful demon left behind. At that time, she promised Inuyasha that when he successfully killed 100 demons and brought back 100 ancient books, she would help him awaken the demon blood in his body and become a real demon. She didn't know whether such a decision was right or wrong. Ancient books were easy to find. This was just a small thought of hers. She couldn't leave the shrine. Only through books could she know more about the outside world. As a half-demon, it was naturally impossible for him to kill 100 great demons. However, if he could complete this task as a half-demon, Inuyasha, as a half-demon, would have been greatly tempered. Then, even if he didn't awaken the demon blood and become a complete demon, he would have enough strength to prove something to his demon father. But unfortunately, this half-demon still broke the agreement between the two sides. In the end, he chose to steal the things enshrined in the main hall when she wasn't paying attention. Unconsciously, the young witch had been immersed in the things described in the ancient book in her hand. This was a travelogue type of ancient book. It recorded an unknown paradise. Perhaps, only this kind of romantic record would be different from the lies that people told each other. There was no need to agree on anything. She just needed to describe a certain thing and put herself in a clear perspective of a bystander. Time gradually seemed to become meaningless for the young witch. She only occasionally added some firewood to the fire. Perhaps it would be better to move back to the shrine room, but it would destroy the current atmosphere. Everything was silent, which was also loneliness, and loneliness was conducive to thinking. But to his dismay, this silence was broken in the end. At this moment, a figure was leaning on the railing of the shrine's corridor and cautiously looking around. Hearing the sound, the young witch finally pulled herself out of her thoughts and turned around. It was the woman who was carried by Inuyasha and was seriously injured. However, she wasn't an ordinary woman, at least, the young witch discovered this when she was healing her. Okashime. When she saw this witch, she was indeed stunned, but she wasn't too frightened. Obviously, the fact that the other party was dressed as a witch made Okazime feel a little relieved. No matter which god the witch worshipped, it was still better than those lawless monsters. "Did you save me, young priestess?" Oziyu nodded. "Who is this shrine worshipping? Why can't I feel any divine might?" "I didn't consecrate anyone." The young priestess shook her head. "It's just a place to store things, don't be so formal. Also, the person who treated you was indeed me. But it's someone else who brought you here." Aujin Shimeheim frowned. All the witches were born with strong spiritual power, so they should be able to sense her identity. But this little girl in front of her, who had not yet fully grown up, was not in awe. "Who brought me here?" The young priestess frowned, thought for a while, and said, "A stupid half-demon." Half-demon, one of the dignified Zanzu goddesses, was saved by a dirty half-demon. This witch's words reminded Okazime of the figure she saw before she fell into a coma. It seemed to be a young man in a red robe. Is he a half-demon? But now was not the time to care about this kind of thing. She found something in unripe rice village, so she must go back and report to the god Amaterasu Amikami as soon as possible. Unexpectedly, as soon as she left unripe rice village, she was ambushed. In a near-death situation, fortunately, she sent out her secretary and created a clone to replace her to fake her death. Even so, she was seriously injured. "How long have I been in a coma?" Okazime couldn't care less about the indifference of the young priestess. She needed to determine the time. "Since you came up, about a day." "A day." Okazime lowered her head, and her expression changed several times. She wanted to walk down the steps of the shrine, but her body was too weak. A little movement would affect the wounds on her body, and she would feel a burst of pain. In this case, not to mention going back to Takamagara, she couldn't even leave this shrine. Okazime quickly looked at the young priestess in front of her because she found that the young priestess didn't seem to be weak. "Come here, I have something to tell you." Okazu Shimeheim simply sat on the steps of the shrine and waved at the young priestess, who was the guardian of the shrine. But at this time, she found that the young priestess stood motionless at this time. Okazime felt that the priestess seemed to have lost her soul. At the same time, an ominous feeling suddenly made Okazime's heart beat fast. She had a premonition and suddenly raised her head to look. Under the high moon, a petite figure gradually appeared. It was a girl in a white kimono. Around the girl's neck, there was a white ribbon. Okazime didn't know why she used such a ribbon to wrap her neck, but it was obviously not what she cared about. It's you." In an instant, Oziyu Shimeheim recognized that the girl in the kimono who appeared under the moonlight was the one who attacked her and almost killed her. Sure enough, Eric-sama was right, you didn't die. The girl in kimono slowly descended and finally landed in front of Okazime, and stretched out her white and flawless palm. Oziyu Shimeheim moved her body back again and again until she finally leaned against the wall behind her. She had nowhere to go. Her face showed a horrified expression. At this time, she was weak and couldn't resist at all. She subconsciously looked at the young witch, thinking that even if she couldn't escape the fate of death, at least at the last moment, she had to drag this terrifying girl in kimono down so that the witch could escape. At least, she had to bring her situation to the god lord, Amaterasu Amikami. But what frightened Okazime was that she found that the young priestess's eyes seemed to have lost their luster for a moment. What kind of eyes were those? It was as if he couldn't see anything. It was as if his line of sight was right there, but he had turned a blind eye to it from beginning to end. The girl in kimono naturally saw Okazime's action, but she just sneered and finally put her palm on Okazime's forehead. A miserable scream sounded in front of the shrine. When the sound disappeared, Okazime seemed to have never existed. Humph! The girl in kimono just turned around and looked at the young priestess indifferently with a slight cold snort, and then her figure gradually disappeared. There was nothing more important than Araki-sama's wish. She needed to turn into Amaterasu Amikami, participate in the alliance of the 3 noble sons, and then capture the other 2 noble sons in front of Araki-sama. The firewood of the bonfire was broken because of the burning, and the cracked wood made a crackling sound. In front of the shrine, the young priestess suddenly moved. The priestess tilted her head, and a trace of doubt flashed in her eyes. However, this trace of doubt quickly disappeared. She sat in front of the bonfire again, occasionally adding new firewood, and continued to read the travel book in hand. Time began to pass again. She felt that she could live like this forever. The things described in the book were really interesting, and she was really reluctant to read it all at once. The young priestess's mouth curved a little. Then I won't finish it first. The young priestess thought so, but her fingers couldn't help turning a new page. Just as she was about to read the rest of the book, the young witch was surprised to find a black sign in the middle of the book. The priestess held the card in her hand. She didn't know what material this black card was made of and why it was in this ancient book, but it seemed to be suitable as a bookmark. Since he was interrupted by this black sign, he decided to stop here. The young priestess closed the ancient book with both hands, then closed her eyes, showing a trace of unfinished reading. She stood up, and the black card had become a bookmark at this time. Only a small part of it was exposed. To Emo Xiaofei's relief, Zixing didn't lose the key part of her memory because of the reset of time like the goddess. The secret code of Precious Long, which was like a name, naturally didn't need to be used. Zixing also indifferently said that it didn't matter if Emo Xiaofei forgot this secret code. Because he didn't lose his memory, he saved a lot of time. Emo Xiaofei met with Zixing, who had already arrived at Nagato's house, without alarming anyone this time, and once again asked for the reason for the last time, failure. Obviously, the shadow that appeared in front of Master Emo in the end and the face of Haru Narukami may be the real reason for the reset of time. Emo Xiaofei directly agreed with Zixing's idea. After some discussion, Emo Xiaofei and Zixing planned to explore the dungeon of Nagato's house again. Since Zixing's approach could dig out some things from Haru Narukami's mouth that he had not been able to find out, it meant that this direction was not wrong. And the method was the same as the last time. After all, if the steps were the same, there would be no accidents when going to the dungeon. As for the previous 2 times, it didn't matter whether they experienced the Sasaki Kojiro incident or not. However, I'm still very concerned about one thing. After discussing the next action at night, Zixing looked at Emo Xiaofei and expressed her thoughts. How much does Master Emo know about Tsuruko Nagato? Emo Xiaofei said solemnly, according to the movie's spoilers and discussions on the internet, her identity is Pen's spirit. The reason why the heroine transmigrated from modern times to ancient times is also because of Tsuruko Nagato's resentment. According to the storyline, Tsuruko Nagato would die when she was very young, but obviously, Tsuruko Nagato is still alive now. Saburo Nagato has also returned. According to the plot, the village will hold a sacrifice soon. Tsuruko Nagato was killed in the sacrifice and then became a resentful spirit. But you know, time has been resetting. I can't go to the day of the sacrifice. Zixing lowered her head and pondered. Haru Narukami's reaction was very intense at the time. He seemed to be very reluctant to give birth to Tsuruko Nagato. He also mentioned the word monster. Is Tsuruko Nagato a monster? I'm afraid there are still many secrets of the Nagato family that we can't know. Emo Xiaofei sighed and said, It's a pity that my ability can't be used. Otherwise, I wouldn't have to work so hard to inquire. In the Nagato family, Master Nagato and Saburo Nagato must know something. Unfortunately, although Saburo Nagato is drunk, he is still quite vigilant. As a samurai, his strength is probably very good. And my time is limited. I have to reset every 3 days. So, almost all of them end in failure. As for Master Nagato, as if thinking of something terrible, Emo Xiaofei said solemnly at this time, this Master Nagato seems to be in his 50s, but he is very powerful. Although I don't know any swordsmanship, Sasaki Kojiro's physique is very good. But whether it is a sneak attack or a head-on confrontation, I can't survive in the hands of Master Nagato. Survive? Zixing opened her mouth. Emo Xiaofei smiled bitterly. I have been killed by Master Nagato 34 times. Such a dying samurai? Zixing was really surprised. Emo Xiaofei nodded and said, this Master Nagato is so strong that he doesn't look like a human. From a human point of view, he is a monster. Could it be related to the terrible thing in the dungeon of the Nagato family? Zixing asked with a frown. You mean, Master Nagato's strength comes from the secret of the Nagato family's dungeon? I don't know the specifics, but, Zixing said seriously, I think we should start with Saburo Nagato. After all, Lord Emo can catch Saburo Nagato and interrogate him. Emo Xiaofei shook his head, it's useless. Saburo Nagato is too stubborn. Zixing suddenly sneered and said, so, if we bring Saburo Nagato to Narukami Haru, will it be different? Or, let the entire unripe rice village be in chaos, exposing the longevity palace in the dungeon, and the fact that Narukami Haru is not dead. Emo Xiaofei moved his lips as if he saw a ghost. This greedy wolf clan's young master. Why can he think of such a violent operation every time? But thinking about it, since I can't get more from the normal way, then I will destroy everything completely. Isn't that a way to break the situation? Emo Xiaofei narrowed his eyes. Sometimes it's okay to do something by hook or by crook, right? On the hillside where they came from, Taisetsu was thrown to Devil Island by Boss Luo from here. Master? Miss Maid looked at Luochio curiously at this time. Only Emo Xiaofei had not received the Christmas gift given here. Now, the prepared gift was in Luochio's hand, but it was not given out yet. Chapter 705. Although they had decided to take action against Saburo Nagato, there was still an entire afternoon before the banquet. Emo Xiaofei and Zixing discussed for a while and decided to contact Tsuruko Nagato before the banquet. After all, no matter how they looked at it, Tsuruko Nagato would become the spirit pen in the movie. The reason why they came to Yenwiwa was that they went to the cinema to watch the spirit pen movie. After Emo Xiaofei changed into the Kondo family's servant's clothes, Zixing gave a few different instructions to send the people around her away. She also changed into ordinary clothes. At this time, she had already walked into the Nagato family's courtyard with Emo Xiaofei. This Nagato family was divided into 2 parts, the old house and the new house. The new house was only completed in recent years. For a small samurai family in a remote area, it was incredible to build such a huge house. But considering the income of the crypt in the dungeon, the two were not surprised by the Nagato family's source of funds. The place where the Kondo family was arranged to live was obviously the new house, while Master Nagato's residence had always been located in the old house. There was a huge courtyard and 2 small buildings in the middle. Work harder and build the wall again. It's almost as big as a fortress. Zixing looked around. She was not like Emo Xiaofei. She had long been familiar with the things here, so it was somewhat new to her. Along the way, they met a few servants of the Nagato family. However, after they saw the Kondo family's clothes, they all retreated respectfully. After all, this was the real master of the Nagato family. Even if they were servants, there was a difference. Because of the reset, this time when Madame Hikari came to Nagato's house, she was prepared before everyone greeted her. She covered her face with a veil and said early that she was not feeling well. So, it was more natural to let the maidservant replace her at the banquet later. As for Zixing at this time, she did not conceal herself. Neto Tsukiheim's appearance could be said to be beautiful. Such beauty was only the identity of a maid. As for the servants next to her, they were also extraordinary. These servants of the Nagato family could not help but feel a trace of the extraordinariness of a wealthy family. They became more and more respectful. A man with some status among the Nagato family's servants had the courage to come forward. "Are you two planning to visit this place? This guy is called Yoda. He is considered an elder of the Nagato family. However, there was only a first name and no surname. However, he is very eager to be bestowed with a surname. He belongs to the hard-working type," Mo Xiaofei whispered in Purple Star's ear. "Let me introduce myself. You can call me Liang Tian." At this time, Yoshida rubbed his hands and said flatteringly, "If you want to visit the nearby area, it's best to bring me along. I'm not boasting, but there's nothing I don't know." Zixing glanced at Mo Xiaofei, who shrugged. Madame Purple Star nodded and said indifferently, "Then we'll have to trouble you. We really want to look around nearby. After all, Nagato's house is really well built." There was a smug look on Yoshida's face. It was probably a sense of honor. At this moment, some sobbing sounds came from not far away. A maidservant of the Nagato family was tied up by two strong servants at this time. The maidservant's clothes were a little messy and dirty. She should have fallen on the ground or even been beaten. "What happened?" Mo Xiaofei frowned. Yoshida quickly said, "Oh, nothing. It's just that this maidservant committed a crime, so she was punished a little. It seems that she is going to be locked up." As the two said, after a while, the maidservant was pushed directly into a small wooden house by the two servants. However, Mo Xiaofei recognized that the maidservant's name was Ah Xiao. She was the person who took care of Tsuruko Nagato since she was a child. According to Mo Xiaofei's observation, Ah Xiao's care for Tsuruko Nagato was like a biological sister. He also inquired about Ah Xiao's origin. Ah Xiao's parents were servants who served the Nagato family for a long time. However, her parents died in an accident when she was a child. She was considered an orphan. It should be because of her identity as an orphan. She sympathized with Tsuruko Nagato, who lost her mother since she was a child. Her father, Saburo Nagato, was on the battlefield. Unknowingly, she had a special feeling. "You two, this is just a small matter. There is nothing to see," Yoshida suggested at this time. "Why don't I take you two to visit the next place? I don't know if you two have heard of the teleportation of a powerful demon beast in Unripe Rice Village before?" "We know about this." Mo Xiaofei nodded calmly. Yoshida quickly said at this time, "Then you two must go and see the ruins left by the demon beast." Mo Xiaofei had naturally investigated this kind of place, but only some broken stones were left. There was nothing to see. Unexpectedly, Zixing nodded directly at this time. "Then I'll have to trouble you. You two, please come with me." Yoshida walked in front. At this time, Zixing whispered to Mo Xiaofei, "I want to go to the ruins and see it with my own eyes. I'll leave Tsuruko Nagato to you first. If there is a chance, bring her back quietly to the place where I live now." Mo Xiaofei opened his mouth. This greedy wolf young master is really crazy. Not only Saburo Nagato, but even Tsuruko Nagato is planning to directly tie her up in the dungeon and reunite with Narukami-chan, right? However, splitting up can indeed save time. Mo Xiaofei was more anxious to solve the mystery of resetting time than Zixing. "Mr. Yoshida, I won't go over. I still have something to do," Mo Xiaofei said directly at this time, letting Yoshida take Zixing over. After the two had gone far away, Mo Xiaofei quietly walked to the cabin where Ah Xiao was locked up. Ah Xiao being punished was a development that he had never seen before. Perhaps there would be a new discovery. The Nagato family's rules were very strict. Even if the firewood shed used for confinement was not locked, the servants who were locked here would not leave privately. There was no escape at all. After all, there was a curse. Probably. "I'll be hungry for a long time, right?" Xiao rubbed the place where she had just been hit with a hard object. She couldn't help but sigh. I don't know how Miss Tsuruko is doing at this time. I just bandaged the wound on her forehead. Creak. The door of the firewood shed was suddenly pushed open slowly at this time, and a strong figure appeared at the door. It was too bright outside. Xiao couldn't see the appearance of the person at once. She thought it was an evil servant of the Nagato family, so she couldn't help but shrink back. Everyone knew that Miss Tsuruko was somewhat disliked in the Nagato family. As Miss Tsuruko's maidservant, her status was naturally not high. Xiao knew this very well. It was common for her to be bullied by other servants. However, she had always been angry but did not dare to say anything. She did not dare to show any expression in front of Miss Tsuruko. Xiao knows she is wrong. She shivered and begged for mercy in horror. Xiao seemed to hear a sigh. It was so soft that Xiao almost thought she heard it wrong. Later, this person walked in. Xiao could gradually see the appearance of the person. This was not any member of the Nagato family that she knew, nor was he someone in the village. After all, there was almost no one who did not know who grew up in this place. You are the Kondo family's lord? Xiao looked in awe. The man in front of her was not only tall, but he was also wearing a Shigeru clothes. Although he was not a samurai, his status was much higher than that of civilians. Are you okay? Emo Xiaofei squatted down and softened his tone. He had contacted everyone in Unripe Rice Village, including the Nagato family. Xiao was naturally no exception. It was just that she didn't know it. Emo Xiaofei also had a complicated feeling about Xiao. Now that he thought about it, this feeling could be called angry at her incompetence. Xiao had been bullied by the Nagato family's evil servant, but she dared not say anything. In order not to let Tsuruko Nagato suffer any harm, she was willing to bear it silently and swallow her anger. It was probably a blessing for Tsuruko Nagato to have such a loyal maidservant like Xiao. However, how similar was this to him in the past? Before he obtained the ability, he used to not let his family worry. Even if he suffered a lot of grievances outside, he always endured it and always showed his smiling face in front of his parents. It was not because he was too strong, but because he was too fragile. He did not dare to cry in front of his loved ones. I'm fine. Xiao did not dare to look up at the Kondo family's lord. It was not that she was afraid of strange men. As a member of the cursed family, how could she still be unfamiliar with men, just like the women in other villages? It was just that the concerned gaze of the Kondo family's lord in front of her made her feel a little uncomfortable. Miss Tsuruko was still young and insensible. Even if she knew about relationships, she did not know how to express it. Other than that, she could only rely on her deceased parent. She had never let someone nobler than her really care about her. Even if it was just a simple greeting. What's wrong with you? Is it still painful? Do you want to drink some water first? Emo Xiaofei looked at Xiao in surprise. Looking at her somewhat absent-minded gaze at this time, he couldn't help but frown. As far as he knew, Xiao was actually very strong. Sure enough, it was because she was punished by the family this time. It was too painful, right? As a woman, her resistance to pain was indeed weak. The water was from the kettle he carried with him. In fact, it was a bamboo tube. Emo Xiaofei unplugged the stopper and sent it to Xiao. He smiled slightly and said, "Drink some. You seem to be sweating a lot." This was indeed a great temptation. Xiao, who was ready to endure the hunger and thirst, really couldn't resist the temptation of the water in front of her for a while. "Thank you." Xiao lowered her head and blushed slightly. This was her appearance after drinking a few mouthfuls of water quickly. Emo Xiaofei nodded, then sat directly on the ground and looked at Xiao. All the information about Xiao that he had inquired about flashed in his mind. The two didn't speak and kept silent. Emo Xiaofei suddenly asked, "Have you ever thought about leaving this place?" Xiao's shoulders trembled slightly. Her face was gloomy. She gave Emo Xiaofei a bitter smile. Finally, she shook her head and gave her answer. Why? If Xiao leaves here, there is no place to go. Xiao whispered, I can't leave here. I won't be able to survive outside. Why can't you survive? As long as you have a pair of hands. Emo Xiaofei shook his head, but he knew that almost all the young women in this village were harmed by the cursed lie. If he exposed this lie at this time, would she believe it? Even if she believed it, could she accept it? After all, she had been like this all the time. Emo Xiaofei believed that Xiao had been to the underground palace several times. How would she face this? Looking at the woman who pretended to be strong in front of him, Emo Xiaofei couldn't help but sigh again. If it was really cruel, it would probably directly destroy all her defenses. This sinful Nagato family. Such a scourge should not exist. A trace of coldness quietly appeared in Emo Xiaofei's eyes. Xiao subconsciously shrank her body and looked at him in horror again. Emo Xiaofei found something wrong and frowned. What's wrong? Is it painful again? No, it's just that, sir. Your appearance just now. Xiao stuttered, but she didn't know where the courage came from. It's a little scary, me. Emo Xiaofei was stunned and touched his face subconsciously. Where is it scary? Xiao shook her head and hesitated. Xiao doesn't know. It's just a little like the master when he was angry. Humph. Don't compare me with that kind of beast. Emo Xiaofei subconsciously lowered his voice like a roaring beast. Yes. I'm sorry. Xiao shivered and shrank her body tighter, but surprisingly she seemed to be a little angry. Please don't scold the master. He is a good person, for us, powerless and sad. Emo Xiaofei clenched his fist. He knew everything, but he couldn't say it. How similar was this feeling of powerlessness to him when he was weak and submissive? He could only suppress the anger in his heart and not lose his mind. Let's not talk about this. Let's talk about your matter. Me? Xiao was stunned and confused. About Xiao? This sir of the Kondo family came here for the first day. She didn't know him before. Why was he suddenly interested in her? Was it because her heart suddenly beat faster, but she remembered that she had been impure for a long time. She felt sad and could only lower her head. Xiao is just a very ordinary servant, nothing special. I heard that you are Miss Tsuruko's maid, right? Xiao blinked. She was not surprised that he would know this. This was not a secret. Thinking of Tsuruko Nagato, Xiao's face glowed with a smile. Master Saburo's wife died early. Xiao took care of Miss Tsuruko since she was a child. Emo Xiaofei nodded and asked abruptly, Is there anything special about this Miss Tsuruko? Xiao showed a puzzled look. Emo Xiaofei didn't want to explain too much. I mean, do you feel that Tsuruko Nagato is different from others? Miss Tsuruko has been very sensible since she was a child. Xiao said subconsciously, then she seemed a little nervous. Why are you asking about Miss Tsuruko? After the nervousness, there seemed to be a trace of vigilance. Emo Xiaofei casually fabricated a reason. I see that Miss Tsuruko's complexion seems a little bad. I feel that there may be something wrong with her body, so I'm curious. Anyway, if he couldn't solve the mystery of time reset, Xiao would forget about it after today. Emo Xiaofei simply began to boast without any burden. Unexpectedly, these words made Xiao uneasy. She subconsciously grasped Emo Xiaofei's arm. Sir, what's wrong with Miss Tsuruko? Effective. Or was it that this maidservant cared too much for her young miss? You tell me first. Yes or no? Emo Xiaofei asked indifferently. Xiao lowered her head and thought hard. Suddenly, she looked up as if she had made a decision. Sir, you are the first to say that Miss Tsuruko has a physical problem. Is that so? Emo Xiaofei showed a surprised expression. Xiao hesitated for a moment again at this time. There is one thing that my wife told me before she died. Can I believe you, sir? Believe. It can be light or heavy, can I respond to it? But Emo Xiaofei nodded in the end. Chapter 706. For the first time, Mo Xiaofei felt that the so-called not being able to see the full moon was related to some of the rumors mentioned by the crazy Narukami Haru. After thinking for a while, Mo Xiaofei asked solemnly, "Xiao, has Master Saburo's wife ever mentioned why she can't see the full moon?" Xiao shook her head. This maid was indeed very loyal. Over the years, she had always remembered Narukami Haru's instructions. She had never let Chizuko Nagato see the full moon. "Sir, do you think this has something to do with Miss Chizuko's abnormality?" Xiao looked at him nervously at this time. Mo Xiaofei had to say, "I don't know what the specific situation is. But if possible, I hope to check Miss Chizuko's condition personally. After all, I can only see it from a distance. There are some things that I can't see directly." Xiao was now at a loss. At the same time, she had an inexplicable wonderful feeling for this sir who cared about her. It was a very intimate feeling. As a servant in the family, she didn't think too much as long as she could take good care of her master. Especially after so many years, this was the first time someone said that Miss Chizuko had some physical problems. Narukami Haru's instruction before his death had always been a secret that Xiao kept. In fact, she was very confused about such an instruction. She even thought about what would happen if Miss Chizuko saw the full moon once. But this idea still made her loyal to Mo. It was precisely because of this loyalty that Xiao would grab the life-saving straw when Mo Xiaofei said that there was a physical problem with Chizuko. This is probably her eagerness to protect her master. Mo Xiaofei never thought that there would be such a major discovery this time. "It will be the full moon in a few days." Xiao calculated the time at this time. "Sir, will you still stay here at that time?" Kondo Tsukain claimed that she was just traveling and passing by, but she did not specify how long she would stay in Nagato's house. Xiao naturally looked a little uneasy, fearing that this sir, who could see Miss Chizuko's physical problems, would leave soon. "In a few days? I'm not sure if I can survive 3 days this time." Mo Xiaofei smiled bitterly in his heart. Xiao's earnest expectation and trust made him subconsciously avoid it. "I'm not sure about that either. It'll depend on Miss Yuji's instructions." Mo Xiaofei shook his head. In the end, he couldn't bear to disappoint Xiao, so he said seriously, "However, as long as I'm here, I should find a way to figure this out. My lord, I'll leave Xiao to you." Xiao knelt on the ground. Her grand gesture made Mo Xiaofei's breath a little turbid. He suddenly wanted to escape from Xiao. "Don't worry." He finally escaped from this woodshed. Before leaving, he learned from Xiao where Chizuko Nagato was. He didn't know if Purple Star had found anything in the ruins where the monster was killed back then. Mo Xiaofei decided to contact Chizuko Nagato personally. "By the way, I still don't know how to address you?" Yoshida was still rubbing his hands. Zixing said indifferently, "Mr. Yoshida, call me Zixing." "Miss Azzy." Yoshida raised his eyebrows. Just as he was about to continue with his compliments, Zixing suddenly stopped. Of course, the ruins where the monster was killed back then would not be in the current house of the Nagato family, so Yoshida walked out with people all the way. At this time, in the distance, several male villagers were walking over here with a lot of things on their shoulders. "What are they doing?" Zixing asked directly. "Oh, that's for the sacrifice in a few days," Yoshida said casually. Although the monster was killed back then, the ancestors were afraid that the monster would turn into an evil spirit and return from the Netherworld Kingdom to continue to do evil. So, every year on the day of the monster's death, they would sacrifice it. This was probably the sacrifice where Chizuko Nagato would die in the movie plot mentioned by Mo Xiaofei. It was just that he couldn't go to the day of the sacrifice. Zixing silently watched these men carry things past her. As a priestess of the Greedy Wolf clan, when she looked at these so-called tributes, she subconsciously felt that they were too simple and crude. However, considering that this was a remote village, she didn't think too much about it. The two continued to move forward. Yoshida introduced the unripe rice village along the way. Soon after, they came directly to the place where the ruins were located. At this time, of course, she saw the man who carried the tributes before again. In addition, there were many villagers who were already here early. They were responsible for building the altar for the day of the sacrifice. It was a shelf-like thing built with wood and straw rope. Zixing looked around and saw that not even a blade of grass grew. She grabbed a handful of soil from the ground and kneaded it, turning it into dust. It seemed that this was only the case for this piece of land, and the surrounding soil was very fertile. Yoshida said that this land was stained with the blood of the monster. Since then, nothing could be farmed. That statue, was it also built by you? Zixing pointed to a broken statue in front of the altar that was built. The reason why it was said to be broken was that this statue had been broken from the middle. Because of the erosion of the wind and rain, the original appearance of the statue's face could no longer be seen. But judging from the sculpture, it seemed to be a woman. If it wasn't split in the middle and slanted to the sides, it should be a statue of a woman. Of course, this was ignoring the fact that this woman had many tails growing out of her back. Fox demon? Zixing narrowed her eyes. There were also fox demons on the plateau. It was impossible for her not to have dealt with them. Therefore, from some subtle features, she had some guesses about the statue itself. She subconsciously counted the number of tails behind the statue. Yoshida said directly, "Yes, it is a powerful monster who inherited the name of Tamamo no Mei." According to the legend passed down in the village, hundreds of samurai and monks were directly lost in the crusade that year. Even the yin-yang master invited by the ancestor of the Kondo family was seriously injured. Only then did they finally succeed in getting it. Well, this statue was built by the fox demon back then. The crack on it was said that it was split open by the lightning summoned by the yin-yang master back then. 5 tails. Zixing finally finished counting. She didn't know what kind of monster Tamamo no Mei was, but there were a few 5-tailed fox monsters on the plateau ruled by the greedy wolf tribe. Strictly speaking, they were between high-level and mid-level monsters. They weren't that strong, but they were able to charm their opponents. It was said that this Yenwuya world was surrounded by the sea. Was there any land on the other side of the sea? Was there any connection between this place and Kelowna? She wasn't Emo Xiaofei, so she knew more secrets. Naturally, she had to consider more things. Through this period of observation, Zixing was almost certain that this was related to the fragment world mentioned in some ancient secret scrolls of the Greedy Wolf clan. It might even be a fragment world directly. A fragment cut off from the long river of history would not affect the original inheritance of history. However, this fragment could undergo different evolutions again at the same time through human will. When the fragment world could develop into a real complete world, it was the time when the owner of the fragment world transcended from a huge cage of heaven and earth. "Can I go to this statue and take a closer look?" Zixing suddenly asked. Yoshida said indifferently, "Of course, this is not a problem. But it's best not to touch it because it's not auspicious." Zixing didn't take this advice in her heart at all. As the young master of the Greedy Wolf clan and the successor of Een Greedy Wolf, would she be afraid of a 5-tailed fox demon? Even if Een Greedy Wolf was seriously injured and couldn't come out at this stage, her soul was not something a 5-tailed fox demon could shake. Bypassing the altar, Zixing came to the statue and looked at it carefully. The more she looked at it, the more Zixing frowned. The costume on this statue seemed to be from a dynasty of the ancient Kelowna continent. This is... She stopped abruptly. Behind this statue, she stared at the pedestal of this statue. Staring at some words engraved on the pedestal, since this world woke up, Zixing began to understand the information of Yenwuya's world. From customs to culture, even the most basic component words and so on. At this moment, the words on the pedestal turned out to be "How could the words of Kelowna appear here?" Zixing was shocked. It was a pity that these words had long been eroded by the wind and rain, and there was very little that could be recognized. There were only a few words, and nothing could be made out. Fish. Return. Pring fish. Return. Pring? Lady Zixing, did you just say something? Yoshida asked curiously at this time. Nothing. Zixing shook her head, but pointed to the words on the pedestal and asked, the words engraved on this pedestal, do you know what they say? Yoshida shook his head. I don't know this. This statue was built before my grandfather's grandfather. Then, are there any copies of the words on this pedestal preserved? Zixing asked again. This. I really don't know about this. Yoshida looked at Zixing awkwardly, then rubbed his hands and said, but I can help you ask, Lady Zixing. Then I'll leave it to you, Purple Star nodded. I hope you can give me an answer before tonight. Of course, I won't treat you badly. Just take this money as a reward. Zixing took out a heavy money bag. But this guy in front of her, who looked like a dog slave, did not accept it at this time. Lady Zixing, it is my honor to help you. I can't accept this money. However, maybe you can say a few good words for me. This way, I should be able to live a better life in the Nagato family. Zixing glanced at Yoshida and remembered that this village was deceived by the cursed lies. So, she was not surprised that Yoshida had such thoughts. Money was useless to him, but the promotion of his status in the Nagato family was a real benefit. Okay. Zixing nodded. She glanced at the pedestal again. After confirming that she could not see anything else, she continued, it's getting late. I have to go back and serve Lady Tsukiheim. Of course. Lady Zixing, let me lead the way for you. Yoshida walked in front more enthusiastically, almost to the extent of groveling. The villagers who were building the altar here were still busy at this moment. After all, the once-a-year day of sacrifice was coming soon. This was a big day in the village. At this moment, the hard-working villagers did not notice that the statue pedestal that had existed for many years. The text engravings on the pedestal were slowly changing at this time. The traces of erosion were fading away, and part of the text that was originally smoothed out by the wind and sand began to become clear, brand new. If someone discovered it, they would find that the side of the pedestal engraved with text at this time could be described as brand new. Master, this style of writing is so beautiful. This is the regular script. It should be the official language of the Song dynasty. The young club owner smiled at this time and said some common knowledge that he knew even without buying information. Luochu squatted in front of the pedestal, reached out and touched the text with his finger. It turns out to be another life. Yes. Yu Yi smiled slightly. After all, it develops according to the will of the owner of the fragment. However, I think that if Miss Qin were to see this record, her Dao heart would probably be broken again. Luochu shook his head, then smiled and said, I suddenly remembered a line from a movie. Miss Maid blinked her eyes and showed a curious expression. Luochu looked at this pair of beautiful eyes and said slowly, in fact, God is also a human, but God can do things that humans can't do. That is to say, after removing the part that humans can't do, they are equal. Miss Maid said indifferently, it's just a slightly higher level creature. Luochu did not speak. After staring at the engraved text for a while, he suddenly reached out his hand and touched it, creating something out of thin air. A piece of rice paper with the characters on the pedestal had been completed, and then it grew into a mounted appearance, like a calligraphy painting. After that, the pedestal returned to its original appearance, and the text on it naturally became blurred again. Luochu handed it to Yu Yi, and Miss Servant Girl began to roll it. You go and pick up Taisetsu. Boss Luo said softly, you are responsible for the content of the transaction between us and Erex. I want to stay here for a while. Okay. Yu Yi smiled, it's good to finish early. I can go back in time to prepare dinner for Master. The movie in the cinema was only 2/3 of the way through. The gate of the country of darkness opened, and a large number of demons and warriors wearing ghost masks slowly passed through. Dozens of ghost-faced warriors were carrying a huge carriage at this moment. Sitting in the carriage was one of the three noble sons, Tsukuyomi. While moving forward, the mighty team suddenly stopped. "What's the matter?" Tsukuyomi frowned, and her voice came from the carriage. A demon-faced samurai flew in from the front and respectfully reported, "Divine Lord, there is a demon blocking the way ahead. He calls himself Shutendaji and says that he has something important to report to you, Divine Lord." "Shutendaji?" Tsukuyomi was slightly surprised, and then nodded. "Let it come forward." Tsukuyomi had heard of Shutendaji. It was a powerful demon, but it didn't belong to any side of the three noble sons and lived alone. If it could be recruited at this time, it would be a good thing.